All right, Mason, I have a question for you.
All right, what is your question?
What's the motto of an ice cream shop in paradise?
I don't know. What is the motto of an ice cream shop in paradise?
Heaven Ice Day.
Have a nice, great. All right, great start. All right, let's do this. Hell yeah.
Hello and welcome back to the worst of classic series that has seemingly been going on for close to, well, it's 4.5 years now since we did the first one. It's crazy how long it's taken this shit to finish, but we're nearly there. We're nearly there. We are in the middle of season 24 with Paradise Towers, a story that I have seen once before 10 years ago, 2013, in the lead up to the 50th anniversary, as they were playing stories from each Doctor's era on TV every week in my country. And Paradise Towers was the first Seventh Doctor one they played. And I do remember some of it, but it's been so long that I definitely need to rewatch it. And I thought including it on this series was a good idea because you get my reaction to something I have seen before but barely remember. Also because on the DWM 2014 poll, Paradise Towers is quite low down, so it is considered by fans at that point in time to be one of the weakest of the show. So it is a valid contender, despite the fact that I know, because I have Twitter, I know that this is a cult favorite among many, and I have found a person who has been on this series before in the videos for the Time Monster, the Armageddon Factor, and Time Flight. That'd be Mason, who has told me that he absolutely loves Paradise Towers, and I thought he'd be the best contender to watch it with me.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm back. I'm back for more fun. So yeah, I really like Paradise Towers. I'm a massive fan of the McCoy era, on like just as a whole. I'd say there's like two, maybe three stories that I don't really like. The rest of them I absolutely love, and this being one of them. So I'm really excited to watch this with you. This is I think it's gonna go great.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very mixed on season 24 of what I've seen of it. That those who saw the video I did with Will Maddox on Time in the Rani will know how I felt about that story. I have very mixed feelings about Time in the Rani. I think there's a lot of great ideas. I think one of the things that I disagree with some fan consensus about season 24 is people who say it was a bad idea. I don't think it's a bad idea at all. I think there's a lot of great ideas. Maybe not ideas that would translate to, I guess, Doctor Who at its most depth or emotionally, powerful or, intellectually vast. But having a season of Doctor Who that puts a lot of emphasis around an actor who has a lot of experience with a very specific style of comedy is actually, I think, a really neat idea, especially for this time period. But my main issue with Time in the Rani was that I felt like a lot of the camera work didn't actually complement what the actors were doing enough to make it as fun as it could be. And I found a lot of that story, I was laughing more at things not being done the way they were supposed to, as opposed to it being executed in a way that was meant to be funny, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I get that. That makes sense.
And obviously, I still had a good time, but I didn't have a good time in the way that the authors intended.
Yeah.
But my hope with Paradise Towers is, I guess, well, I guess it's more so. I hope that it's able to capture the sort of idea behind season 24 in the way that I want it to. I think from memory it kind of does, but it's been so long. It's been 10 years since I've seen it, so I can't actually remember it, like, in detail of whether or not it did hit that mark. But given your high praise of it, I have hope that it will be fun, enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely say this. I think it's better than Time in the Rani.
I mean, I think that's a common consensus.
Yeah. This is my personal favorite of season 24. I do also really like Dragonfire, but for me, this is the most interesting of the four. I like the ideas that it plays with and the way that it executes them really well. And I think that despite the fact that season 24 is rather far from the McCoy type of stuff that I personally like, I'm a big fan of like the like manipulated, like the master plan kind of stuff. I still really like this as like a sci-fi concept, and it's one of the it's the kind of sci-fi that I really enjoy in.
Yeah, season 24 is a lot more innocent than 25 and 26 are. It's a lot more naive's not the right word, because it is self-aware, but it's not as ambitious, if that's the right word to use.
I'd say so, yeah.
It's trying to be light-hearted entertainment for a lot of it, with also blending in the Doctor Who sci-fi side of it as well. The one scene that I remember the most vividly is the scene in the pool with Mel. I remember that scene very well.
Yeah, which is screaming in the.
And then there was this very almost don't know if it's like quite a Looney Tunes-esque moment, but it's almost this bit where Mel's just like, "Don't you think we've quite had enough?" Like something like that. I actually made a tweet recently. Yeah. I think Bonnie Langford is underrated as an actress. I really like her.
Yeah, I think she's fantastic. I think for me, she much more shines in the audio dramas that she does than she ever did on TV.
Oh, as a character, for sure. She gets to flex her range more in audio because of the characterization. But I think that she gets a lot of flack because of people remember the screaming. But it's kind of I'm the same. It's the same thing with Carol Ann Ford. People rag on her because of the screaming, but she's actually a really good actress.
Absolutely. It's the actress's fault.
It's the same thing with Deborah Watling as well. She's incredible, and people are like, "Oh, she's just a screaming damsel," and she's really not. Anyone who doesn't understand Victoria, go watch Will Maddox's video about Victoria on the Universal channel. That video does her justice, I think.
Oh yeah, I haven't watched the video, so I might like repeat some of the points, but like the fact that she is like a screaming, like that's part of her, like that's part of who she is, like that's on purpose, because the character of what's her Victoria, sorry, that's what the character of Victoria is. Like she just doesn't really enjoy traveling with the TARDIS. Like it genuinely frightens her.
Yep, it's Will did a dissection of her anxiety as a well-constructed and carefully handled character journey that begins with her traumatic events in Evil of the Daleks and ends with her acceptance of her, state of mind in Fury from the Deep. It's fantastic. So, yeah.
That's interesting.
But yeah, I am... This is... I think of the Seventh Doctor ones in this series that I'm doing, probably the one I'm the most looking forward to, because I have seen it before and remember liking it, but it's been so long that I can't remember it. Because that's the thing, right? I can't remember the events, but I do remember the setting, and I remember how the story, like, I guess, made me feel.
Okay.
But yeah, it is an interesting thing. There's a list on screen. We're almost at the end. Very, very close. Once we got through this and Dragonfire, we will unlock Dimensions in Time, which is the finale of this series. That's going to be good fun.
Everybody on for that one. Like, all 8 people that have ever been on this series.
Well, I think there might be some people that won't want to come back, but I'll try and get as much fan service as possible. Because that makes sense, right? Dimensions in Time is a fan service story, so I'll get fan service for Worst of Classic Who. But people like Adam and Antonio are very busy, so who knows if they would be interested. But I'll get as many as I can. What will hopefully be a gem from the Seventh Doctor's first season. I think one thing that it's definitely doesn't have going against it that was concerning about Time in the Rani is it doesn't have the burden of having to be a post-regeneration story. Because that was one of the things that made Time in the Running difficult for Pip and Jane Baker to navigate, is they had to tie that in, especially with Colin Baker refusing to return to the role, which made things really complicated. The one thing I did really like about that element of Time in the Running, though, was there's that one scene with Mel and the Doctor, when the first time she sees McCoy, and she doesn't believe he's the Doctor. I love that scene. That's great.
Oh yeah, I love the part where they like feel each other's pulse, and then he just looks up and goes, Mel, like just like he's finally like found her. Like I love that. That's great.
Yeah, like the fact that like he thought that the Rani was Mel, and she thought that it wasn't the Doctor, and then they realize who each other are.
I do really like that scene.
Yeah, it's a great moment. So yeah, I'm rewatching off the DVD. I do not have my Blu-ray yet. I've ordered the standard edition, but it hasn't arrived in my mail. But even if I did have it, I wouldn't be able to watch it anyway, because as we discussed before we started recording, computers don't have Blu-ray drivers in them, even though their Blu-ray's like nearly 20 years old.
Yeah, I have the Blu-ray. I could watch it on that TV, but there's no good way to set up my camera, so I'm watching it on BritBox.
Yep, waiting for PCs to have Blu-ray players in them is like waiting for the Winds of Winter to come out.
God, yeah.
And much like the Winds of Winter coming out, as soon as that comes out, people will say, okay, where's the Dream of Spring? And then it's the same thing, once PCs finally have Blu-ray players, they'll be like, okay, where's my 4K Blu-ray player now?
Exactly, yeah. Where's my headphone jack, Apple?
Yes.
Where did you bring it?
Yes, why can't I watch Mel scream in 4K? What's going on?
Come on. I'm really excited to watch this. This is the third time I'm watching this story. I watched it once when I was going through like Classic Who for the first time, and then I watched the extended version on the Blu-ray. And I'm really excited to watch this again. So yeah, I think that's it for me.
I reckon we're going to have a great time.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, we had a great time with the Time Monster, and we had a great time with the Armageddon Factor. Not so much with Time Flight as a story, but I still think we enjoyed ourselves watching it.
Oh yeah, like it was still fun. It wasn't fun because the episode was good.
No, it was fun because we were filming a video and watching it together and laughing at Anthony Ainley's racism.
Oh, God. It's not. I haven't rewatched any of those stories since we watched them, I think. And that's the only one that I'm not really itching to rewatch anytime soon. Like, it can stay over there in my memory. Like, I don't need it brought back.
I mean, it has its moments, I guess.
Okay, I'll say this about Time Flight. I think the first episode is interesting.
Apart from the Eirich stuff. That's the only thing I really don't like about the first episode.
We mourn his loss as well.
Yeah.
The best part about it is Janet Fielding's actually trying, but no one else is, so it looks like she's overacting.
Happy landings, Doctor.
Oh, God.
Anyway. None of that.
Will, I know you're out there. I know you're watching. I can see you through the screen. You hear me, Will? Can you hear me? I fucking love this theme song.
Keith McCullough gets a lot of shit, but he made a great Doctor Who theme.
He did. I really liked this.
Yeah, it's really vast and epic sounding, and obviously of its time too.
It is really long.
Although the one regret I have is that we didn't get like more seasons with the Dominic Glynn theme.
Yeah, I really like the Dominic Glynn theme.
I wish the Dominic Glynn theme started at the Twin Dilemma.
I agree.
Because it suits Colin so much more.
Absolutely.
Okay, now this is familiar. Oh, you can instantly tell Andrew Cartmel is now on the staff.
Yeah, that was one of the fun facts I looked up. This is the first story he commissioned.
Yeah.
That's the problem with young people today. No spirit of adventure.
I like to think of season 24 as a slow sort of transition over the 4 stories. In a way, and then Remembrance is where McCoy finally, you know, I guess forms fully.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with well, no, I can't say that because you haven't seen the story yet.
I think that's enough of that, Mal.
That's a great cut.
You may want to lie by the pool doing nothing all day. I intend to explore.
Man, McCoy just looks so distinct in his TARDIS. Like he's so different to all the other doctors. He doesn't like a lot of other doctors blend in like it's their house, whereas McCoy feels like a visitor in his own home, if you know what I mean.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, like I never feel like it's hard to explain. He always feels so separate from his TARDIS in a way. His personality and it's really hard for me to put into words, but every other doctor doesn't have this one thing that he has.
It definitely helps that, like, with McCoy specifically, they got rid of a lot of the in the TARDIS scenes. Like in season 26, there's one scene in the TARDIS in the entire in the entire season. So he really doesn't have a lot to like be in home.
This just rubbish.
Nothing's just rubbish if you have an inquiring mind.
Rubbish.
You don't happen to know another planet with a swimming pool, do you?
Why don't I have...
There's lots of planets with swimming pools. The Doctor's too nosy to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
Personally, I'd rather stay here and explore. I wonder what happened.
Oh, McCoy's so fun.
I love him, yeah.
I love his hand gestures and everything. It's just so charming.
Yeah, he really just dove into the character. And I love that.
Yeah, my favourite thing about the 7th Doctor is the actor who plays him.
I'm proceeding along Potassium Street, corridor 5673.
Potassium Street. I feel like I'm in an 8-bit video game with this music.
I love it.
I'm expecting like Street Fighter where like their bodies are moving in 2 motions and you got like text on the screen scrolling. Dong dong dong. 80s who like especially late 80s is very of its time, but it's a vibe that I enjoy. It's one where I can transport myself back to when it was made and feel like I'm living vicariously then.
I love how every time they say their names, they give the whole spiel of caretaker number 54, blah, blah, blah.
The Kangs! Red Kangs! Red Kangs are
Oh, the
best!
Kangs.
Who's best? Red Kangs! Red Kangs! Red Kangs are best! Who's best?
The red Kangs, I gather. The other colour Kangs?
Yeah, the blue Kangs, but they're cowardly cutlets! And the yellow...
Oh dear, red and blue gangs. I know all about those in my country.
I was only trying to be friendly.
Friendly?
Say hello. Hello.
Where's the psychic paper when you need it? He hasn't got it yet.
He wants the how you do.
Oh, imagine the Doctor with the psychic paper being like, can I be part of this gang? I promise I'm not blue. I think some people don't like Kef McCulloch because he's not subtle, but I think there's a place for unsubtle music in drama like this.
Yeah, and season 24 is not the place. Hell yeah.
He's got like more confidence than he did in the last story.
What you wear is high fashion and ice hot for an old one.
Oh, thank you very much.
Bow, bow, bow. Bow, bow. Bow, bow, bow. I'm noticing a lot of triangular shapes.
Yeah.
Illuminati!
It's fucking Bill Cipher.
Even the set is very video game, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Oh, here we go. It's these things. I love a good vacuum cleaner monster.
On the bottom, it looks like a face.
Man, Kev McCulloch's music is just so fun.
Damn. I do believe that this yellow king is unalive.
Unalive. Red Kangs, Red Kangs. See, this could be so cringe if it had the wrong tone, but it just does have the right tone.
Absolutely.
No visitors, no board games, no fly posts, no visitors.
No board games?
Visitors aren't allowed.
No visitors ever.
Not allowed.
Fuck that. No, can't have no
Not
board
since
games.
time started.
What are boys? There are old ones, and the caretakers, and kangs, and the...
I'd be interested to know what this gang's interpretation of reproduction is. So what I'm gathering of this world is that there's male police and there's female gangsters.
Chief.
Yes, I know.
Yes, I know. I have a friend who's a bit like that. He's attracted to women because of the clothes they wear.
That's it?
And it's not it, but it's one of the main things.
Okay.
It's like, I guess it's like the kind of the peacock thing.
Wear blue kangs. Build high for happiness. Build high for happiness.
I love the weird way that they talk.
A nice little snack coming up for you, my beauty. So you'll grow up big and strong. That's Daddy's little pet.
I've located that group of them, Chief. Large as life, twice as nasty.
Andrew Cartmel loves his juxtaposition, doesn't he?
It's so good.
Fucking hilarious.
Season 24 is just JNT and Andrew Cartmel just battling the entire time.
You're coming with us.
Uh-oh.
Do you care for a cup of tea?
Is this the lesbian? Is this the lesbian grannies?
Would you like a
Yes!
cup of tea?
Something that I had canon that Russell T Davies was inspired by when he did Gridlock, because that has lesbian grannies as well.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's all right to go in now. Come in, dear.
What a whimsical society.
I love it.
Mel, what a delicious name.
It's a
Delicious name.
This episode is basically if Candyland was cyberpunk.
You know, I think with season 24, you're right that it's Jane T and Cartmel battling, but I think with this story, I think Cartmel got the victory.
Absolutely.
Whereas I think with Time in the Rani and Delta and the Bannerman, it was J and T.
She's a nice, polite, clean, well-spoken girl. Just the sort we like.
Okay, so we've got a class divide.
Yep.
This is really, it's like they're doing world building, but they're doing it like with really, you know, funny characters.
Yeah, just in the most insane way possible.
Have you always lived here?
Oh, we've been here for ever such a long time, if that's what you mean.
84 years.
It's been 84 years.
What was it like before?
Oh, never mind about that, dear.
That's suspicious.
Don't think about it, it's fine.
Thin little thing, aren't you? Oh, but never mind, dear. Tilda and I will feed you up, won't we?
Don't you body shame this gorgeous lady, you silly old women.
That is a really tasty looking cookie.
Yeah, that's a really chocolatey cookie.
I love that. It looks like if you took a Chips Ahoy and just biggened it by 3 sizes. I know there's a different word for that, but that's the one I came up with.
Biggened it. You mean enlarged?
Yeah.
A nozzle and sucking things up. Well, the wall scrawlers make up a lot of silly pictures.
That's no way to talk about religion, mate. Ancient
I love those
carvings,
stories.
hieroglyphics.
Something wrong. There'd be instructions in here about how to deal with it, wouldn't there? Hmm?
Or
That's
named things
sass.
that they-
Hmm?
I just love this story so much.
Yes, no matter how much society progresses, old farts will always exist.
Yeah. It was always better back then. Well, what was it like back then? We don't remember, but it was better.
Nostalgia.
A war to fight or something.
Oh, something. Oh.
I often
It
wonder
was a
whether we
war.
won that war or not.
I don't suppose.
I love that line. I often wonder whether we won that war or not.
God, Mel's such a big kid. I just want to go to the swimming pool.
To be fair, if I traveled in the TARDIS for presumably as long as she did, I would be like, I
Hang
just
on.
want to go to
Are they trying to coerce Mel into a threesome or something? Better stay here with us. Hmm? No, I think the reason is because they don't want us snooping around, not because they want to, you know, have a three-way scissor.
Yes!
Are these old ladies annoying you?
No!
Are you annoying these old ladies?
No, she isn't.
Oh my god, the sincerity.
So?
You need me to protect you.
I most certainly do not.
But that's my job.
Yeah, feminism.
I'm Pex. I put the...
But it's my job!
I am Pex.
Man, it's crazy. I watched Trial of the Time Lord last week, and this is so different.
Oh man, I can't even imagine.
All hail the great
Oh,
architect!
that's
What
a
should we
bit,
do?
that's a bit,
Yeah, that's not good.
Kill him.
Well then.
His face.
What an
What do you think of
enthralling and surprising introduction. I really, really, really enjoyed that.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely flew by.
I love it, yeah. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the sort of the jovial and naive nature of the characters, and sort of the ignorance of not the ignorance, but the sort of like trying to hide all of the dark side under the rug, if you will, of all these different characters is really, it's both creepy, but it's really alien as well, because you have this whole society of people that are all like this, and they've been all made like this. It makes sense. Like, it's not just they are quirky for the sake of it. They are like this because they're from a society that has made them like this. And I think using the world building to create these fun, interesting character scenarios is really good. And also they use those quirky elements to sort of create juxtaposition by introducing and setting up serious world building for the audience, with the characters not taking it seriously at all.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many little things that I just love, like just the like them kind of talking about the past, which like does come back later. I think if I remember correctly, and like all the Kangs being named like bin liner and like like all that stuff, which is just things you would see around. So like if like those are the only concept of words you have by living in this very confined area, yeah, those are the names you're going to come up with for your like for each other. And I love that stuff.
The establishment of the genders being different to what we understand as well, in terms of what they interpret the genders as being, is different to the binary of, I guess, 1987 culture.
Actually, I don't know if I would say that that's a gender thing. I think that's more of a class thing.
Yes, that's true. But I'm saying that from the point of view of the Kangs, they are one and the same. Because they don't know what boys are. So their only understanding of the difference between people is the class. And that's why, that naturally, it makes sense why you'd end up with gang warfare. Because that divide has been, you know, it has been put on them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Like if you were to like ask them, they probably wouldn't know what a girl is either, or a woman. Like they they say we have Kangs, we have Resis, we have caretakers, and then we have the.
Then there's like subdivisions of different Kangs as well.
Yeah, and it's cool, and it's obviously so like artificial. Like they look exactly the same, just one is red, one is blue. Like.
Yep. And again,
I love
that as an allegory for actual gang warfare is quite clever.
Absolutely.
Where I live, there's two examples of that. So in the city that I live in, the blue gang is called the Crips and the red gang is called the Bloods. Obviously, red blood is like that. It just kind of makes sense. And then I think in the countryside and in the rural areas, there is the Mongrel Mob, which is the red gang, and then I believe the blue gang is Black Power.
Okay.
We're in New Zealand. And I believe red and blue is a common distinction between gangs around the world. And then there's some that have like a yellow gang as well. And in this story, there are the yellow Kangs somewhere, but we haven't seen them yet.
I mean, the only one we saw was at the very, very beginning, where one of them was killed by the...
Oh, yes, of course. Yes, that's right.
Branch.
That's right. That's right. Very true. Yeah. Yeah, really fun, good performances, really interesting characters. I think, but the thing that I have to praise the most is the world building. The world building in this episode was outstanding.
I love this story so much. I remember watching it and like knowing that it was one of the more disliked episodes, and when I watched it, I was like, I don't understand the hate for this at all. Like I remember watching it going, this is amazing. Like
the tone
like,
is very season 24, but the story under that tone is great so far, at least.
Yeah, you take out the crazy stuff, this could easily fit into like any of the other Carmel seasons, I think.
Oh yeah.
This is
obviously, Stephen Wyatt, who wrote this story, is the same guy who did The Greatest Show in the Galaxy as well, which is another excellent story.
Fun fact, that's my favorite Doctor Who story ever. Like, well, on TV at least.
Does that mean that Stephen Wyatt has to be one of your favorite writers then? Because he's done this and that?
Yeah, he also wrote a...
he did the Psychic Circus? Psychic Circus?
Yeah, which is a sequel to mainly The Greatest Show, but there are some elements in Paradise Town. I remember really liking it, but I mean, there's a certain actor in there that kind
controversial. It's controversial, and it's controversial for reasons that are not Stephen Wyatt's fault.
Yeah, absolutely. And
don't blame him for that.
Sorry, what?
I don't blame him for that. That's an unfortunate circumstance.
From what I'm aware, it was recorded before any of that stuff had come out.
Yeah, I believe so.
But that's true. I've never really thought about Stephen Wyatt being one of my favorite Doctor Who writers, but I mean, I've at the very least liked all of his stories. I don't remember much from Psychic Circus. I do remember really liking it. Specifically the stuff to do with, I mean, it's a Psychic Circus origin story, basically.
I guess the only thing going against him for you would be is a lack of volume. So he's only done a few of them, whereas other writers have done a lot more, and maybe that would count.
Like, if I were to think of favorite writers, the first ones I would go to are because I've read a bunch of the books that came out of the Wilderness Years. The first one I would think of is Paul Cornell.
Mm-hmm. He's done a lot. He's done a lot in the EU.
And then with TV, obviously like Robert Holmes is the obvious one.
Again, done a lot of stories.
But he actually, even then, I would say Ben Aronovich is one that I really like, and he also only did 2 TV stories.
That's true.
I don't know. I guess Stephen Wyatt is just one I don't commonly think about because there's so many other parts of the McCoy era that people talk about, and this is one that is unfortunately kind of left in the dust in terms of.
I think it would maybe you could make the case of he's the most underrated writer.
I think I would do that. Yeah, I would say that he's a very underrated writer.
Yeah.
In terms of specifically of the for the people who say that this is a bad story, because I do think that Greatest Show in the Galaxy is very well liked. It's just that this one is the one that people don't really like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say Stephen Wyatt is probably a fairly underrated writer, and I wish he'd write more because I think he's very good at conveying his very complex ideas in the confines that was late 80s Doctor Who.
Yeah, I don't know who I'd say is my most underrated writer, because a lot of the ones I like are really well liked and popular. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Maybe Christopher Bailey, but again, his stories are the Mara stories are well liked on the whole, I think. So I don't know. It's hard. I could maybe say Christopher H. Bidmead, but he's more of a divisive writer. Some people love him, some people don't.
Yeah. I do think that's a fairly good one, especially in our circle. It's very divisive.
I know the one. So I think a good case, and the reason why I think she's underrated is because of the fact that Catherine Tregenna wrote a lot of great Torchwood episodes, and if you count that as being part of the Doctor Who umbrella, I would consider her, because people don't talk about her. And I think the reason why they don't talk about her is because The Woman Who Lived isn't that well liked by a lot of people, including me.
Oh, okay.
But her Torchwood is great. So I think she fits in that category for me.
Okay. It's been a long time since I've seen Torchwood, so I don't really remember any of the episodes she... Wait, did she write the episode where, like, a bunch of people, like, from, like, the 30s or the 40s, like,
Yes.
landed in the...
Yes, Out of Time. Out of Time.
Yes. That one was a really good one.
So she wrote Out of Time and Captain Jack Harkness for season 1. Series 1, I should say. Both those are, like, two of the best of that series for me. And then she also wrote for series 2, she wrote Meet and Adam, which are two of my favorites from series 2.
I don't think I ever watched series 2.
Ooh, okay. Well, Adam is probably my favorite of hers, and there's like it's an episode where there's like another member of Torchwood in the hub, and everyone just acts like it was normal. He like tricks them into thinking that he was always there. It's a great episode.
That's awesome.
And then there's an episode called Meet, where Gwen and Reese have this really, really fierce argument, and it's like, the acting is just, it's this very specific, it's a really distinct scene because you have a scene of two actors who are playing a couple who are supposed to be in love with each other, obviously. You know, they are partners. There's something distinct because they're both Welsh actors, and when they both get really angry, their accents get really strong. Like, it's a really distinct scene just on the back of that, but yeah. I really like Catherine Tregenna's Torchwood. Anyway, back to 7th Doctor Era's stuff.
Yeah, back to Paradise Towers.
Yes, back to Paradise Towers. A considerably more serious drama than Torchwood, clearly. My favourite moment where the Sylvester McCoy theme plays in any Doctor Who story is at the start of Part 3 of Project Lazarus.
Ooh, yeah. I completely agree with
that. Because the music that playing at that moment has so much meaning and 100%. Ramifications. One thing I can always say about the McCoy era, the stories on the whole from memory have very engaging pacing. Part of that's probably helped by the fact that there's a lot of 3-parters. If anything, some of the 3-parters should be 4. They're too short. Delta and the Bannerman, for example, should be 4 parts. I think. It would be less chaotic. Maybe that would make it less enjoyable for people. But in terms of narrative, I feel like it needs room to breathe. Some people think that about Ghostlight as well. I'm not sure.
I would agree with Ghostlight. Well, I mean, I give all of season 26 a 10 out of 10, so I just think it's kind of perfect overall.
Well, with Ghostlight, if it was 4 parts, it would be easier for people to understand, and it would be more accessible. But it wouldn't make the story better for me. It would just make it... I don't know, it'd just be easier for people to understand. That's it, really.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I love PAX.
But I'm very... Not to flex, I'm very good with esoteric storytelling. And so I understood Ghostlight pretty well when I watched it. Only just, though. Only just. Like, it was... I felt like I was under pressure when I was watching it. I was like, okay, I gotta keep up with all this information.
I still don't entirely know what's going on, to be entirely honest. I want to listen to the audiobook of it.
Have you heard Mark Platt's explanation of the seesaw metaphor?
Yes, I have.
I like how these machines have a theme.
I must get fed up. Do you?
No.
Never?
Never. Yes, we can count that as your last request. You're entitled to one if you're to undergo a 327 Appendix 3 subsection 9 death.
You know, this guy's line delivery. Yeah. Have you seen the IT Crowd?
Yes, I have.
You know Richard Ayoade's character, Maurice Morris, I think his name is. It's like a dark authoritarian version of that.
I could totally see that, yeah.
That after you've been guarding the condemned prisoner for 35 minutes, you must all stand up.
I know what's happened here.
The caretaker's present.
Oh, you little bastard. This is the Seventh Doctor realizing his power.
Yeah.
Put their hands above their head.
See, people say he's not manipulative until season 25. They're wrong. It starts here. I mean, he tries to be manipulative in Time in the Ronnie. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
He's just too dazed and confused to actually be successful.
And escape.
Rules should always
Oh,
make
yeah.
sense.
You smug little shit. Yeah,
I love
they
it.
are so just tied to the rules and the procedure that they don't think outside the box. It's a bit like the Natural History of Fear. It's like everyone in that whole society is completely tied down to the procedures.
Absolutely.
And not only do they not think outside the box, it's actually illegal to think outside the box.
Somebody somewhere has had an idea.
Yes. Oh, that's one of my favorite lines.
And say that again. Shall I show you how?
No, I think you've read quite enough for one.
Could you see the Kangs running in the background?
I did. That was very clever. I fucking love this setting.
But from what I've heard, there's more to it that anybody's letting on. I mean,
This is just dystopian Golden Girls.
It really is.
You know, you really are very stupid for such clever people. If I were you, I'd find that door and discover what's behind it. Because until you do, we're all at risk. You, me, Mel, everybody.
That sounds like the name of a film. You, me, Mel, everybody. For a soft drink song. Oh, they're scared of it?
I'm also scared of soft drink. Fizz Aid.
Oh my god, is that their first time having carbonated beverages?
Ice hot, Doctor. Ice hot!
I love this so much.
That's amazing. See, oh my god, his walk has a theme. What are you strutting about?
No entry.
Yeah, see, some people might see that scene and think of it as being childish, but the truth is that you have to consider the world building aspect. Is this Mr. Copper in The Wire? Hungry! Oh no, sorry, no. Mr. Magpie, I should say. Mr. Copper is from Voyage of the Damned.
Oh yeah.
Mr. Magpie?
All Kangs know the muscle brain. He's a scaredy cat. When the in-between sent
Muscle brain instead of meathead.
I love the language so much.
along with the other in-betweens.
Who told you that?
Everyone knows that.
He's ashamed of his lack of honor. I kind of like this whole idea of, because the world that they're in is so messed up, it's turned adult people into children. So they never mature because they're never able to mature. They never have that process because they're not nurtured. And so they're always acting like children.
It also doesn't help, again, this Paradise Towers is such a small environment. This is just life forever, so you really have no opportunity for change.
It's very insular.
And you have no idea of his whereabouts.
Fucking hats.
At all.
God. They're, just too big. I wish there was one scene of the Seventh Doctor on the exercise bike, and we never get it. It makes me sad.
Well, maybe the Seventh Doctor needs to, start bench pressing. He could be like, I need to bench press. I need to increase my muscle capacity so I can lift the weight of the universe on my shoulders. I don't interpret this as the Doctor being childish. I interpret it as an understanding that these people are childish and they will only understand him if he speaks their tongue.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's talking in ways that they understand.
It causes needless distress.
Oh dear. They're human traffickers.
What was the episode where Bonnie Langford screams and they key that into the end credit music?
Terror of the Vervoids.
That's right, yeah.
It's her first story, yeah. Well, Bonnie Langford's first story, not Mel's first story. Mel's first story is in Big Finish, I think.
Yeah. Fun fact, that story is still technically not her first canonical traveling with the Doctor.
Right.
Because that happens in a book because fuck continuity.
Well, we're halfway through Paradise Towers, and it's still great.
Yeah. I'm loving it.
Yep, they've developed further on the world building. They made sure to get across most of their ideas in part 1, and that was really smart. And then they've just, used all those ideas now to further develop the story. We've gotten, the Doctor has now got the Red Kangs on his side by charming them with their first experience with a carbonated beverage. That's such a unique scenario. It's like, could any other TV show create, unless there's like another sci-fi show, for example, but like with time travel involved. But like, could you imagine anything else doing a scene like that where there is a group of people who not only don't know what a boy is, but they don't know what soda is or a soft drink, whatever you want to call it, and the lead character utilizes a soft drink to get them on his side through the idea that he is giving them a new experience. Like, that's just so interesting. And it's a form of manipulation from the Seventh Doctor that is different to what people usually talk about. It's a lot more like under the radar because he's not having to overturn his enemies like he did in the other part of the episode, like earlier on when he escaped that room by faking the rules in the book by those people that were so tied to procedure that they couldn't tell he was lying. With the Kangs, it was more like he was able to charm them and coerce them onto his side with a much more sort of much more endearing tactic. I think that is one of the things I praise the most about part 2 is how the Seventh Doctor is characterized. Really well done here.
Yeah, I love how you like. It is really like it's such a good way to like battle the static nature of where they live because I've said it a couple times, but like everything just stays the same. You have like these finite hallways to like exist in, and they have culture in. So you have like cave drawings and all this stuff, and then this guy comes along, turns around a phone machine, and reveals that you can get drinks out of it. Like that really like must change your worldview so much to realize that there's so much about your environment that you don't have access to, and it gets them on his side of like the world is so much bigger than I thought it was. What else is out there? And it is absolutely an interesting form of manipulation on the part to like show them.
They're not thinking outside the box. They're not using their lateral abilities, which is because the lateral thinking is opposed to the law that's being enforced and the culture that's being enforced at Paradise Towers, which is very reminiscent of 1984. It's that kind of thing.
It's so Orwellian. I'm sorry. I had to get one in there.
Not to be pretentious and say that Paradise Towers is Orwellian, but it is very indicative of that idea.
No, I do think this is actually a good example of something that is like at the very least inspired by. I was just doing that to be funny. Like, this is genuinely a good like dystopian idea. I think of having characters that their culture is like you. The only control you have is to arbitrarily separate yourself based on I have red hair, I have blue hair. That's all you can control about your reality.
Stephen Wyatt and I assume Andrew Cartmel, they have really, really smartly utilized the sort of season 24's mission statement is quite a childish one. Not like childish in terms of like not mature, but what I mean is that it is meant to be the personalities of characters in the stories of season 24 are intended to be childlike. But what they've done here is they've used the world building to their advantage to make it actually feel immersive. Because a lot of the time, if you make characters childlike for no reason, it can feel fake and not like a real story. But what they've done with Paradise Towers is they've made it that the society that they are living in is the reason why they are childlike. And that creates a really dark juxtaposition, and I think that's why it's working so well.
Absolutely. Like, it's it's so interesting. Like, I mean, yeah, this is. I've already said this. This is my favorite of season 24. It's one of my favorite, like, McCoy stories just in general. I love it.
I mean, I'm only halfway through it. I'm struggling to see how Dragonfire could top this, but you never know.
There are a few people that place Dragonfire over Paradise Towers.
I think there's quite a lot of people that put Dragonfire at the top of... I mean, the 2014 poll has Dragonfire as the top of Season 24. I actually know some people that have Dragonfire as the bottom of Season 24, I've heard before.
Really? Okay.
Which is not common, but I have heard it. I have heard one person. Funnily enough, that one person was actually JXE. They said that Dragonfire is their least favorite Seventh Doctor story.
Do you know how they placed the other stories in season 24? I'm genuinely curious.
No, I don't know that.
Okay.
I only know that because someone asked them on like a live stream, like, what's your least favorite story for each Doctor? And the Seventh Doctor one they said was Dragonfire. They did give a bit of hesitation at first. They were like, Dragonfire, I think. I mean, the only thing I really know about Dragonfire that I might understand why would be the fact that they cut out the explanation for the cliffhanger bit. Because there was supposed to be scenes that explain why the Doctor dangles himself over that cliff. But then they just don't have it in the episode. And that's, again, a consequence of the 3-part thing. But I'll get to... When I actually watch Dragonfire, I'll probably address it when I get to that story. But in terms of Paradise Towers so far, I think they're doing a great job. I don't think they've done a great job.
I love this story.
There is a small part of me that understands why some people won't like this story, but I think they are misinformed. I think there are layers to this story that justify the things that they are put off by, is what I would say. Like, stuff like, scaredy cat, like, on the surface I can see why someone's like, ooh, I don't want to watch a show that's... I don't want to watch, Doctor Who that's being portrayed like a kid's sort of cartoon or something. But it's the element of why they are like that makes me interested in them. There is a whole other, like, I guess, layer of the onion behind why these gangsters, if you will, these Kangs that are supposed to be gangs, are acting so childish. There is a reason why they are like that. And that's the same thing with I have to be sensitive and careful with my words with this. But there is when it comes to class divide in real life, there is a lot of people in upper classes that look down on the culture that is associated with gang culture. And they, when it comes to their expression, when it comes to their language, when it comes to their taste in music, when it comes to all of that sort of thing, there's and the way that they dress with their clothing, there's a lot of prejudice against gang culture from the upper class in parts of the world. But it's interesting because in Paradise Towers, the gang culture is very childish, and that's the thing that separates them. Is they're so they act like primary school, students, with their sort of their childishness and their that sort of thing, as opposed to the sort of the which is very in contrast to the kind of gang culture that exists in the real world, in our lives. You think of like biker gangs, and you think of like genres of music that are rooted in gang culture, like at least part subgenres, like a lot of for example, like a lot of gangs in Japan are associated with a very specific style of music, like a very specific kind of, I guess it's almost like a street equivalent to Japanese rock or Japanese pop music. Or like in America, a lot of rap music is about gang culture, or it stems from gang culture. It's like there's so many different things that are associated with that. So with Paradise Towers, the Kangs are associated with the sort of childish notions, if you will, and like the bright colors and all that. And I think that's one of my... That, and just to sort of tie my point together, that is probably one of my favorite things about this story so far, is the way that it uses the world building to create a unique scenario like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, one of the interesting things that I hadn't really noticed until this rewatch was the discrepancy in how everyone like referred to each other. Specifically, the way that the Kangs and the caretakers like talked about each other. The caretakers don't call them Kangs; they call them wall scrawlers, because in their perspective, they only refer to the Kangs in the way that they negatively affect their perfect world, in which they scrawl on the walls. There's so many more interesting things about Kang culture.
and that's
the fact that they write on the wall is almost like it's almost like an after effect, like to the viewer, us watching the episode. But that's the only thing they care about.
Yeah, it's so interesting because those I call them hieroglyphics because I don't know what the other word is, but it's like the ancient paintings. To the authorities, that is seen as like to the Kangs, that is part of their history, right? That is a representation of events of their history that they remember. Whereas to the authorities, I can't remember what the guy with the mustache's name is, but to him, he sees it as graffiti. You know, he sees it as vandalism, which is a whole and that again is in real life. It's the same thing. There are ancient carvings, or there are you see artwork, spray paint artwork in urban culture, like that represents people's history and their culture. But then there's people in the upper class authorities that see it as vandalism and as like a disgusting, destruction of property and all that. Like that's the conflict, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, it's always a big disconnect between what is being seen by somebody who is walking on the street and just sees a bunch of colors that they don't understand, or they choose not to understand, and what is probably a very important painting work of art means to whoever made it. Like it's.
But also, at the same time, you understand why these authorities feel this way, because their culture is so tied to procedure that anything outside of their own procedure is considered criminal.
Yeah.
So you sort of understand how they got to that point.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like a lot of the stories, like I've said, it's just I say that like the Kangs and everyone are stuck in these walls, but like the caretakers are too. Like they've based their entire form of government and society and all this stuff around I am the person who lives at the presumably top half of this Paradise Towers. And I know what needs to be done to keep this place clean, and we have like rule books for it. And as more situations come up, you have amendments and like all these things that grow over time, and you realize that like when you form a government around something that already exists, whatever happens, you're going to be intrinsically tied to what already exists, and there's a level of confinement that you're not going to get out.
That is in a lot of ways that is very reflective of the conservative idea at its extreme, of we at one point in time have defined exactly what is right and what is wrong, and we must maintain that values no matter how things change.
There's a lot of people, and I'm not sure how it is in other places, but I know in America there's a lot of people who really, they like to cite a lot of amendments from the Constitution as like proper ways to like base an argument that they're having now, but they're using words and ideas that were written in 1776, like the whole amendment of like free speech. Oh, I have free speech. Like they decided that 400 years ago, and now I get to call you an awful thing that no one should ever be called, and like, but it's because it's my right. And it's when you base who you are on something that is written so long ago, and I mean, you could argue this about religion, but I won't go there.
But it's not just the thing is though, it's not just about religion. Religion's just one example that can have that happen. Like it's because there are aspects of religion that are nothing like that. So It's just that there is some elements of religion that cross over with that idea. Sometimes that can happen.
Yeah, and like I should specify when I say religion, I don't that sounds all encompassing. I don't mean for it to. I'm talking specifically about like conservative Catholicism. I would say is the biggest example that I'm aware of. Like,
well, I mean, it's but it's based on, again, I mean, it's not, because the amendment was 1776. We're talking about biblical texts which are even older than that, and were written in a time that is so different to what we are now.
Yeah, it's reality changes all the time, and it's impossible to get any sentence that, like, it's almost impossible to get a sentence that stands the test of time outside of basic, like, you probably shouldn't kill people. Like I don't think we'll ever reach a point in the future where that's going to be different.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't lie unless you have to. You probably shouldn't kill people unless you have to, and you definitely should. You definitely shouldn't rape people ever.
Oh yeah, no,
Those are like the three things that come to mind.
But even then, unfortunately, that last one is something that's fairly new. Like,
oh yeah, it's disgustingly new. How new it is.
Yeah,
and still, man, and people, and even there are parts of the world where it's still not even really nailed in yet. Like, it is still an issue.
Yeah,
massively.
There's a lot of it's rough. Look at us, we are watching season 24. Talking about the most insane, like awful things that humanity has done, and it's all from a fucking JNT season 24 script.
Well, but this is the thing, though, right? This is the thing, though. When you have writers like Stephen Wyatt and like Andrew Cartmel, they are thought-provoking and they make you think about the world, and that's what they're designed to do. This is a really, really intelligent writer doing this story. For someone to say that they don't like the story because they find it not entertaining, like, fair enough. But to say that they don't like it because it's not intelligent, I think is, in my opinion, a misread of the text. Because I think it's very intelligent.
And you could absolutely argue that, like, the execution of said ideas were a bit too whimsical for the seriousness that they were trying to do. But honestly, I don't think so. And maybe I'm strawmanning a bit, which I don't mean to. But a lot of what I hear about the story is that people think it's, like, too ridiculous. Like, the main guy, like, the main, like, bad caretaker guy, his performance is one of the most criticized from this story. They say he's too over the top. He's too, like, insane, and like there's certain parts of it that from what I remember we'll get to later on, but there's like, but even then, like, it's the era that it was made in, so you're gonna get that kind of stuff. But I don't think that devalues the really serious themes that are being written about by Stephen Wyatt, who had nothing to do with the production itself of the story.
Yeah, I think Paradise Towers has a really strong script, at least from the first 2 episodes.
I would agree.
Yeah, although we are about to hit this is the, I guess, what's the word? The testing point is always part 3. Part 3 is always, this is where we find out what this story's really made of. It's when it can make or break Doctor Who, part 3. There's a lot of the time where the consensus among a lot of fans is that part 3 tends to be the weakest of the 4 when it comes to a lot of classic Who stories. But then there's also some rare examples where it's actually the strongest. I think the best example I can think of where part 3 is the best episode of a serial is The Crusade. Because part 3 of The Crusade, which is the Wheel of Fortune, is like a 10 out of 10 episode.
That was really good, yeah.
Oh.
And like, I mean, is that specifically for stories that are 4 parts?
Yeah. Generally speaking, when it comes to 4-parters, a lot of people say that part 3 is where there tends to be the most sagging, because it's the last. I guess because the part 4 kind of a lot of the time writes itself. You know, you have to wrap up the story. Part 3 tends to be, right, can you expand this story beyond the standard? You know, So
yeah, absolutely.
I have really, really, really liked parts 1 and 2 so far. I think part 3 is going to be a real tester for where is this story going to really land for me. I think is going to be the interesting part.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
If I'm remembering correctly, is part 3 the one with the swimming pool scene?
Do you want me to tell you, or do you want to be surprised?
Actually, no. Don't tell me. We'll find out.
The character of Pex was supposed to be played by someone who was like a bit more Arnold Schwarzenegger in like body type, because they really wanted like have the juxtaposition of this guy who's really buff but also really kind of cowardly. And Stephen Wyatt actually really doesn't like the casting of Pex because of that intention on his part.
Okay.
So that's one. Let me think.
I mean, my take on that is that I'm fine with it because I mean it would have worked if it was a big bodybuilder in the way that they intended, but I still think it works anyway because it's not so much about his figure, it's more about his self-belief. It's that he believes he's a hero, you know? It's kind of like you know in Spider-Man 3 when Peter Parker thinks he's doing what he thinks is cool even though it's not.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And let's see. So
and the way that Pex is executed here, I don't find cringy at all. I think it's really well done.
I agree. I think it's great. I forgot the second one I was going to say, but the last one is at the time of writing the script, Sylvester McCoy had not yet been cast.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. That one really surprises me.
Yeah, that's really surprising because it's so in character.
I agree. Now, granted, all of what I've said is from TARDIS Wiki, so take it with a grain of salt. So,
I mean, it's possible that maybe Stephen Wyatt thought, well, this is what I think would be cool if the Doctor was like, or Andrew Cartmel said that. And then it just happened to fit really well with the casting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
kind of wish.
I will say.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how was it like all of Series 11 was written not knowing who the Doctor was going to be, and then apart from like there's a couple of lines in the Witchfinders where they rewrote it because to account for the fact that it's a female Doctor. I think I heard that somewhere that a lot of Series 11 was written not knowing who the casting was, not even knowing that it was female.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot more. From what I remember, there are more moments in Series 11 that are like, oh, the Doctor's a female now. Like in the Ghost Monument, there's a come to daddy, I mean mommy, when like she's trying to like summon the TARDIS.
I think those are Chris Chibnall edits though. Like those are script edits that he's done.
That's true. I mean, didn't he write the episode?
Yeah, he did. He did.
At what level is it a rewrite versus a script edit? Like,
well, I'm just guessing that that's what happened. I'm guessing that those lines were added in once he knew who the casting was. Near.
Oh.
Oh dear. Oh no, she got sucked through the hole.
It's fucking gone. Yes!
My name is Pex.
No. My name is Pex.
It's like he thinks he's Johnny Bravo. But he's not.
What?
I think you'll find the rule book states that I removed the last section of the bill.
Yeah, see, that was so like IT crowd right there. I think you'll find the rule book states. Also, I haven't mentioned this before. The camera angles in this story are really good.
Well, I don't know what you're so pleased about. There's a 327 Appendix 3, subsection 9 death waiting for you.
Yeah, that was really Richard Iowati.
If they ever did a sequel to the story, like if Russell went back to Paradise Towers, he should cast Richard Iowati as one of the characters.
That would be perfect. Richard Iowati's never been a Doctor Who, has he?
I think so. Yeah, he needs to be a one-off guest character at some point.
That gets killed like 5 minutes into the episode.
He'd make a good cameo. But he needs to be well used though, because like you get some that aren't well used and it's waste, but Iowati can be used so well if you know how to.
I love how Mel's arc is just, I want to go to the pool.
Yeah, I know. She really fits the tone of the story, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Because she is a big kid in a way. And as a fitness instructor, of course she's interested in swimming pools.
The caretaker 348.
I'm well aware of that.
But Chief, if this goes on and the cleaners are out of control, how many of us are going to be left?
Oh my god, these performances are so good.
I love them so much.
By talking out of turn in such a way, you have just broken so many rules and regulations that it would take me several hours just to enumerate them. Wait outside, would you?
Yes, Chief.
I don't even know if he's being literal or if he's being, like, exaggerating. Yeah.
Why? That is very Seventh Doctor, a head full of
This is also very similar to the Second Coming. I know he will return. Some people won't like that. Some people won't like that because it's putting the Doctor under a Christ-like allegory, but it's doing it in a way that is really interesting. To me, anyway.
I mean, I don't even think it's doing it to him. It's doing it to the architect of Paradise Towers. Yeah. He just thinks it's the Doctor.
Yeah. But I know people get very touchy-feely about that sort of thing. And the authority figure is sick of his own procedures.
It's so good. I mean, in his perspective, he's not the authority figure.
In reality, he's not even the authority figure in this room.
But we believe, once you've tasted the Paradise Towers experience,
this is creeping me
you
out.
won't want to change it for any other.
It's like
Wally.
Flexible, and it could be arranged for you to move into this.
Rules could be made flexible. What? I will give you everything you want if you just stay in line and don't break any of my rules, please and thank you. That's basically what just happened.
Yeah, I'll break my rules if you don't.
Yeah, and the fact that he's so willing to bend the rules shows that he's a corrupt authoritarian as well. That it doesn't even stay consistent to his own authority. He feels like he's above the law.
Except we seem to be going down. Very fast!
Very quickly.
This is very Revenge of the Sith. R2, we're going down!
They're all just drinking their sodas.
His masterpiece.
Yeah.
Only.
Man, I love that attention to detail.
What do you think you're doing about it between the 4-7-9? But it's only really...
It's little arms.
I was going to the basement anyway.
Overpowered by the cleaner.
He's warming up his knee.
I like how Kev does a noise each time he kicks it.
Yeah.
Oh.
No! Red Kangs leave no outlooks. Blue Kangs have got into their brain quarters and won the game. Blue Kangs are best!
Please! This is no time for...
This is him becoming the professor.
We made it!
She's so hyped for the swimming pool.
I just don't believe it.
It does look really nice.
I really don't.
Pex looks terrified. This man has never seen sunlight.
Yeah, that's like an element of anxiety that we wouldn't understand.
Oh, true. All of a sudden, massive open space.
It's like when a cat goes into a new house.
Being dangerous is just a trick by the caretakers, so they don't have to come and clean up the pool all the time.
I think it's a bit more than that, Mel.
I mean, that might actually be how it started.
That'd be the funniest way for it to start.
Amendment 1, don't go to the pool. It's dangerous. Oh no, it's the macro.
It's like the macro from Walmart. You're from New Zealand, that's the warehouse. And I think in the UK, is it in the UK? In the UK, is it Tesco's?
I don't know. I don't know anything about UK stores.
No. That was an interesting reveal. The machine itself is the great architect.
I'm about to make the biggest stretch I've ever made in literary analysis, but it kind of reminds me of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Have you ever read that?
No.
It's about it's a really, really depressing science fiction short story. And it's about a computer who is put in charge of like Earth's military systems. And it becomes really self-aware and decides that humans are like the worst thing in the world, and it like feels true hatred for them. So it kills everybody except for these like 5 people. And these 5 people, the computer like tortures constantly and like puts it through, it like traps it in its own like hellscape. And the only way that the only way that the characters get out is by killing themselves. And it's really depressing. And it's just like whenever I see stories about like a machine that is like kind of kept a bunch of humans trapped in like in like the walls of its own reality, it reminds me of that. This is a lot more fun than I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. You can probably tell by the title, but it reminded me of that. Yeah, what did you think?
Oh yeah, I made a few comments across part 3. You actually made a good observation about Pex, how he's like scared of the new environment he's never seen, and like how illustrating that Mel having to go through so much strife just to see the swimming pool really emphasizes the restrictions of Paradise Towers.
Yeah.
I had to hack the elevator to get there.
Yeah. Pex had to use his trusty foot to kick it like 3 times.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Obviously the Doctor has found a way to unite the blue and red Kangs for a cause. The disingenuous advertising is very creepy. Like, you will come to Paradise Towers and there's everything you could have ever dreamed of. Like that sort of thing. Almost like a utopian ad.
Yeah, have you ever played Half-Life 2?
I'm aware of it. I'm aware of its popularity.
It reminds me of, at the beginning of the game, they like your character arrives at a train station and they have this like speech that loops overhead of this train station, and it's very much like a dystopian. It's like, welcome to City 17, like the place where like I'm proud to call City 17 my home, and I was trying to remember, but the ending line that it says is, welcome to City 17. It's safer here. I think that's the line. But it just reminds me of that, like, the constant, like omnipresence, and, like, you're almost suffocated by how much everyone's telling you how great this place is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very overwhelming.
Yeah, it's welcome to City 17. It's safer here. That's what it is. And it's like this, and I know I'm analyzing that instead of this, but it's just this really weird line of like, it's safer here. Don't leave. Stay here. This is where you want to be. Even if things suck here, it can't be as bad as things out there. Like, it's... But yeah, like, the disingenuous marketing in dystopias are always... They always have a... Even if they're, like, the most simple things ever, they have a twinge of creepiness to them.
Yep. Well, I find, maybe not to the same extent, but I find disingenuous marketing in real life quite unnerving in some aspects, depending on what it is. But this is like the extreme level of it.
Actually, slight foreshadowing to a later segment, I kind of felt that with Sleep No More. Oddly enough, when they have ads about like, now you can work even more with our new Morpheus machine or whatever it was called, just like that idea of like, it's better now.
Yeah, and of course there was that scene with I keep forgetting his name, the guy that got eaten at the end of part 3.
Chief Caretaker.
Yes, the chief caretaker went to the granny's house with that third one, and he had that conversation with her that was it was blackmail, basically.
Yeah.
But the emphasis on he feels like he's above the law and he can bend the rules his way. And like you notice that's foreshadowed throughout the story, how all of his associates are very like, they're very, exact on the procedure, and he's just like, okay, whatever. I can't be bothered to go through all those things. And that is foreshadowing his actual beliefs, that he doesn't really care about the rules. He just wants to assert them and get what he wants out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the line where he's like, "You just broke so many rules; it would take me hours to list them all." Like, he cares when other people break them, but not so much when he does.
Yes, and also this could be me just doing a headcanon here, but sort of a interpretation. But I read the return of the Great Architect from the point of view of the chief caretaker as being very similar to the idea of the Second Coming. This guy has never seen the Great Architect and doesn't know him, but he knows that he exists and he theorizes that he will return.
Yeah, it's like a part of his day-to-day, like, he will return one day.
Yeah, but then the twist at the end is that he was there the whole time.
Yeah, like that's who he was working for, basically, or like he was already, like, he always considered himself, I guess, a subordinate to the Great Architect, but he didn't realize he was actively serving the Great Architect the whole time. This thing that wants to eat people. Or just destroy them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Of course, the swimming pool scene that I remember is going to be in part 4, because we've just gotten to that.
Yeah. I honestly thought it was in part 3, so if you had wanted me to tell you, I would have lied on accident.
Wow. Interesting. Well, I think it's technically not lying. Lying on accident is not lying.
I mean, it's still... What would you call it? Like, it's...
Well, so I saw a tweet recently from a content creator called the Meme Repository, where they said it was about this, and what did they say? Let me just find it. Oh, here it is. I feel like the word lie is thrown around too liberally nowadays. Someone can be deluded without lying. Someone can be misinformed without intentionally spreading misinformation. Someone can be ignorant and completely believe what they're saying despite all the evidence. So lying is intentional. It is a calculated distortion or contradiction of truth. A deliberate attempt to present something as false as the truth. So there's a difference between being wrong and being a liar.
Okay. Well, here, let me ask you this to relate it back to Paradise Towers. Do you think the chief architect is a victim of the system he lives in, or do you think he actively is the reason why the system is the way that it is?
My hunch is it's kind of a bit of both, because what I've seen throughout the story, I mean, it could be different, but a lot of the characters they knowingly do a lot of bad things, but there are circumstances that have created why they feel that way. To varying degrees. I talked before about how they apply these weird procedures the way they do, but they only do it because of the environment that they're in. Like, the culture is like that because of the circumstances that they've been born into. But that's the crux of it, right? That is the reason why part of the theme of the story is outside thinking. Because outside thinking is how you break those negative habits, right? That's how you reach and you progress and you develop, is you look outside, you look at yourself from the outside and think, even though this is all I understand, is this really right? And then that's when you think outside the box, you start to think differently, and then you start to evaluate, well, is this the life that I want to live? Is this what we should be really doing? Despite the fact that it's all I know. You know, that's the whole end point of the lateral thinking, right? And the lateral thinking is how they will escape this vicious cycle they're in. And the even though it is delivered very, like, you know, Mel's hyped and excited about the swimming pool and all that, but the whole thing about her trying to get to the swimming pool, it requires that outside thinking to get there. It requires that lateral thinking to find her way to the swimming pool.
And it's not even like that everyone doesn't know about it. Like, Pex talks about, oh, the great pool in the sky. It's not even like going to the pool is not even an idea that enters his head. Because he's so restricted to the walls that he's already been given. Like, the idea is like, oh yeah, it's always there. It's like if someone said, oh yeah, I'm going to go to the sun. Like, what are you talking about? That's not possible. Like, it's up there. Like, we're down here. Like, what are you talking about? Except in this case, Pex actually goes to the fucking sun. The sun being the pool in the sky. And it's just like, man, how much of the sky and how much of my barriers were created by someone who decided that these were my barriers.
It's also interesting because Mel and Pex have such different perspectives on the pool. Like, for Mel, it's just, I want to go to the swimming pool because I like the idea of going on a holiday and finding a swimming pool and having a good time. Like, it's a very normal... It is an exciting idea, but it's a normal idea for her, whereas Pex sees it almost like a heavenly body. He sees going to the swimming pool as a dream, you know, above.
Yeah.
Something akin to imagination, which is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm really liking this. I'm really liking Paradise Towers. This is a great story so far.
Right. How did you feel about part 3? Like do you think it was let down a bit?
Not as much as some people might expect. Like, in terms of what people say Classic Who does, which I don't necessarily agree that part 3 does sag in a lot of Classic Who. I actually like a lot of part 3s. Anyway.
I would agree.
But if we're going on the idea that that's what happens, I don't think part 3 was significantly lesser. I think it just continued on the momentum, really. I would say the story didn't get better. The only thing that I would say was like a really major, like, oh, that's the big twist at the end, at the cliffhanger with, you know, the Great Architect reveal. That's the big, like, step up in gears. But I think I'd say it carried the momentum of the story, but it didn't make it go into a higher gear until, like, the very end of it.
That's fair.
So it didn't sag, but it didn't rise. It just stayed progressing as it was, doing a lot of the same things right. And as you pointed out, the attention to detail with the other thing that we call it, not just soft drink, but fizzy drink is another thing we use, especially when we're kids. We call it a fizzy drink. But the Kangs, the red Kangs, all having their own fizzy drinks now that they've all had a taste of it and they all want one. Yeah. I like that. I like that detail.
Yeah, I love this story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so happy I'm watching it. It's so good.
Yep. I'm really happy I'm watching it with someone who understands, like, all of these details.
Hell yeah. It's great.
Man, the story's gonna end in 25 minutes. I'm not happy about that. I was enjoying it.
I mean, hey, when you get your season 24 Blu-ray, you could watch the extended cut because every episode in season 24 has an extended cut.
Yep.
Even Delta and the Bearman. You could watch more of it. Aren't you excited?
Sure. The one I really want to see is like the extended version of Ghostlight that has all the script stuff in it.
Oh yeah, that was really good.
I'd really like to see, you know how they made like a 4-part Planet of Giants? They need to make a 4-part Ghostlight with like animation.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
They made a movie edit of Curse of Fenric, which is
I
my
have seen
personal
that.
favorite version.
I have seen that.
I love it.
There's a special edition of Silver Nemesis that's only on the VHS. Hopefully when they do season 25, they include it on the Blu-ray.
Oh yeah, doesn't it make Silver Nemesis like basically a 4-parter?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Oh, what have we got here? His brain has been fried.
It really is ice hot.
It's very hot.
Not a yawny old
Ice hot.
Nah, way of transplanting his brilliant brain to some host body.
What's the cut?
Brilliant brain.
So fun fact, this water was extraordinarily cold.
Yeah, that usually happens. Not as cold as it was in season 7 of Game of Thrones, though. Do you know that story?
I do not.
When Kit Harington nearly died of hypothermia, the system doesn't want you going to the pool, does it? You know what that's like? It's like when the old person that owns the mansion sees kids playing on his front lawn and he sends out his dog to scare them away. Holly Langford is such a good actress.
She really is. Hex is slightly relinquishing his action hero persona. No way in episode 2 he would have let her do that.
Yep, he's becoming more honest. Oh, hello there.
I'm sorry to give you such a shock. I believe you've met my friends before.
Crosses his arms. It's like that bit in Rose when Mickey flares his nostrils.
I will put the world of Paradise Towers to rights.
Oh, yes?
Yes.
You're a cowardly cutlet, Pex. You'll always hide. Always.
It's like that meme where it's the point of view of a guy and there's all these women looking at him disapprovingly.
Oh yeah, and like the party with like all holding cups.
Yeah. Yep.
He's a cowardly cutlet. He's a cowardly cutlet. He's a cowardly cutlet.
Oh, Kev McCulloch's playing along to it.
I never noticed that.
That's amazing.
That's so good.
Uh-oh.
We may need your help.
Oh no.
Unless... Well, I think you may recall the chief caretaker...
Yes?
just isn't the chief caretaker.
He's such... It really does feel like he's possessing a dead body.
Yeah.
Like his joints are stiff.
You know what's funny is back in 87, that hair may look unusual, but these days there's actually like lots of people out there that have hair that look like that.
Absolutely.
It's very popular in like gamer goth culture.
We're very sorry for what we did, and we won't do it again. If we all survive, that is.
This is so
We
interesting.
need each other's help.
She's talking like a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Despite being elderly.
And yes, we'll help each other.
All agreed? Pegs?
Don't ask him.
Fire
He's a
escape.
cowardly cutlet.
That was great.
All the messy creatures will be moving up to the swimming pool zone on floor...
Oh my god, RTD really is a fan of this story. It's like the parting of the ways.
Oh yeah, true.
Mm.
Honestly, the first thing I thought of was in Robot of Sherwood, where the guy was just crossing off cities going, mine, mine, mine.
describe that,
Yes, well, on the 245th floor, Sodium Street, corridor 75, there's a secret emergency
Sodium
supply
Street.
Ice hot! With explosives and arrogance, we can blow the cleaners, no problem!
With explosives and arrogance.
Throw them over the cleaners to slow them down for you to shoot.
Ice hot Nelly!
Oh my god.
I love them so much.
It's hilarious.
63. Time to see what the human garbage is up to in the swimming pool zone.
That's the best line I've ever heard in my life.
Surveillance of the swimming pool is not allowed. Not allowed.
Even he's not allowed.
I love how the voice was like, not allowed. Like,
go to your room.
yeah. Oh, I'm very, very cross with you. That's not Northern. Sorry.
I'm very angry. I am very cross.
Yes. I am.
So be it.
Just that one, like, expression, it kind of shows what the Doctor thinks about stereotypical heroes.
Though no doubt you heard of me. I thought so. Anyway, I'd had so much about...
It's kind of a... It's kind of showcasing how childish you have to be to run a place like this.
Yeah.
Because you contained all these people within that, they are also childish. I kind of like it how it's like Mel admires Pex not because he's built, but because he's brave.
Yes. He and the other, mobile rubbish have found a place to hide.
You're frightened, are you?
I think we ought to hurry. Great architect.
He's really good at this. I don't know why people don't like this performance.
It's because it's like theatrical and it's big. Well, it's an unstable mind lumbering a corpse around.
He's not going to be very well adjusted.
Well, speaking as an expert, I'm prepared to tell the universe you can design a simple doorknob. Hey, look!
Come on, Pex. You know what to do. Be brave, son.
Oh, shit.
But in death, he was brave and bold as a Kang should be.
Redemption. I will say that was quite a fast cut.
It was, yeah.
In the extended version, do they have time between them or no?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay.
When I watched the extended, it was hard for me to tell what was added because I had only seen the story once. It feels quicker than it was, but I honestly don't remember.
That's like my one big gripe with the story so far, and we're almost at the end. Is I just think that should have had more room to breathe. That's it.
I agree.
Both.
Well, I'd be honored to wear it.
Hey. Fuck yellow.
Yellow wishes.
This is very Barack Obama, Joe Biden. I don't see blue states. I don't see red states. I see the United States.
He doffs his hat to that fucking thing again. Oh, look at that on the wall.
X lives.
He doesn't, but you know. And the red and blue being tied together.
Yeah, he lives in their memory.
Yay!
And that's the end of Paradise Towers.
That was Paradise Towers.
What a fun story.
Yeah.
Worst season of Doctor Who, apparently. according to critics. I thought that was a great time.
I agree. That was great.
Yeah, they really in the last episode, they did a really good job of presenting the team dynamic of solving issues one at a time. This is something that there are occasions where that doesn't come across in the right way. We actually referenced this episode earlier, but one episode that I don't think translates that very well is the Timeless Children. You know, the climax of the Timeless Children and how they all like plant those bombs and then escape the ship.
Yes.
The way that that's presented doesn't actually effectively translate what it's trying to do. Whereas what this episode did, the way that it presented the climax of this episode actually utilized all those characters in all those places doing all those things really well.
Yeah, it does a good job showing everyone finally working together, which is really satisfying to see after seeing how utterly defined by division everyone is at the beginning.
Yeah. And it all concludes with Pex's sacrifice. Like I said, I do wish there was a few minutes at the end for a bit of breathing room. That would have really been the cherry on top of the cake for me, if they had allowed Pex's death to have time to let people react to it before the funeral.
Yeah.
I think that would have improved the ending.
Do you mind if I tell you a bit of something from the behind the sofa for this story on the Blu-ray?
Yeah, go ahead.
So on one of the couches is, I think I said this before, it's Peter Davison, Sarah Sutton, and Janet Fielding. And when Pex dies, like at the end, Peter Davison is like genuinely like upset. Like, it's weird seeing him like genuinely invested in like a Doctor Who story, if that makes sense.
Especially because at the start of Time in the Rani, he's just like, and now we go through the worst form of torture, Sylvester McCoy's first season.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is a funny moment, but then you watch Paradise Towers and you're like, oh, actually, no, this is good Doctor Who. Or at least I think it is. I don't understand why other people don't think it is.
Yeah, I don't know either. Like, it's
like, this was such a solid story with great intellectual, deep themes that are woven throughout with all these different characters and all these idiosyncrasies and juxtaposition and utilizing the childlike dialogue really well. And like, I was worried that there was going to be cringe, but there was no cringe in this story at all.
Really not. And you can almost fall into that with some of the childlike elements of the way that people talk, but like even then it was utilized really well, and it's
like in contrast to Time in the Rani has moments that I think are actually cringe, like the way they executed. They don't come across right, and they're a little bit too sitcom-y and a bit too slapsticky, and they don't really form in the right way, whereas this story's actually really, really good at handling that childish side of it.
I agree. And like, you can almost fall into a trap as to like, I don't know Stephen Wyatt's backstory, but you can almost fall into a trap of like writing fake dialogue for people who are like in these like separated gangs, for lack of a better term. But I think that the way that they're portrayed in the setting that they are in, it's done very naturally. Like,
yeah, well, the difference is that the difference is though is because as opposed to a story that's childish, it is the Doctor and Mel visit a world that is childish. You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, what are you gonna say?
I was gonna say, like, I love how, like, there's so many little things. Like, I love how characters are named after things that they would see in their like environment, like the words that they can read. And like, I love how their form of language is the cave drawings that they have on the walls, like of warnings for like I can almost imagine like new Kangs or like people like walking through the walls of Paradise Towers going like, this is what you need to be scared of, or like, this is what is important about our culture. Like this painting of one of our own being strangled by a Kang or by a cleaner, and this one of like the blue Kangs being like being mean to the Red Kings, and I love how much of their culture comes across through the graffiti, especially at the end where you have the red and the blue tied together, and Tex lives being
like it's like an Egyptian looking at hieroglyphics, or it's like a it's like a Pacific Islander looking at carvings, or it's like a kid from the streets, the tough streets in America looking at artistic works of people that have died in criminal activities, or have been there's certain people that have suffered like one of the biggest tragedies of the streets in America is drive-by shootings. And after a loved figure dies in a drive-by shooting, there's a lot of artists that will come together on the street, and they will paint their face, or they will paint something that resembles that person on a wall in tribute to that person, so that when young people born in this city see that painting, they know about their history, they know who came before them and what their culture, who was like a founding father of their culture or whatever. Like, there's so many examples of that throughout the world's history, and the Kang culture is very similar to that with their paintings that the authorities see as graffiti, destroying their property.
Yeah, and I love the disconnect between that, because it's almost like the caretakers are really the only ones that realize that they live in a building, if that makes sense. Whereas the Kang see it as just the world. And I don't think we learn enough about the Resis to really understand where they're coming from. I think we get a little bit because they obviously remember some stuff, but they don't remember a lot of it, which I do think also says something about the fact that they don't live in a place where their own history is really recorded that well. Really, the only ones that want to remember the past, it seems, are the Kang. And they're the ones where the only past they have is Paradise Tower. And the reality that living in Paradise Towers gives them.
Yeah, the entire history to them is very intimate, very intimate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we learned in the episode how long things like this have been going on. But I'm sure it says like in the novelization or somewhere. I'll have to look that up later. But it's definitely something that's been going on for a long time, because they have their own way of speaking. Like, he has been unalived, and mayhaps being one, which I do genuinely use all the time. I don't know if it's because of this story or something else. But just this interesting way of talking that only could have been born from living in the walls of a building that was once something, but now is just a place for these cultures to thrive in opposition to each other.
Yes, Stephen Wyatt has incredible knowledge about the world's culture and history. Really.
Yeah, I love how he portrays the human condition. I guess that's a very interesting way to put it on my part, I guess. But I love how he makes these very clear cultures that all make sense, having been born in this, in Paradise Towers. They're all vastly different, but they all make sense that they came about because of the isolation of this.
Well, I mean, two of the major ideas that are present in a lot of storytelling that I love. A lot of my favorite storytelling does one of these two things, or it does both. Firstly is what you said, the human condition. Secondly is the human heart and conflict. And I think Paradise Towers does a lot of human condition.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
It's such a good story, and
it's probably why I love because it's very clear that Russell T Davies was inspired by many of the ideas in this story for Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways, right? In terms of Satellite 5 being very similar to the Paradise Towers. There's a lot of similarities in that. But that story both comments on the human condition and the human heart and conflict. Which is probably why I'm such a big fan of it. Anyway, you're going to say something.
Oh no, I was just I completely agree, because Paradise Towers, like, I mean, by name is meant to be a place for you to go for relaxation, and like um this place where you can exist away from the troubles of the world, similar to Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways, in which Satellite 5 is used as a place where you can get away from the fact that the world is kind of entirely.
It's all based around TV, right? And TV is escapist.
Yeah, it's escapist, but there's a tragedy in the fact that the only escapist you can have is when other people are almost dying.
Of course, because in the long game they focus more on like the non-fiction, like the news, whereas in Bad Wolf they focus more on like reality TV, which is like blending non-fiction with fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like Bad Wolf in the ways.
Oh, fucking love Doctor Who in general.
It's so good, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. Like I spend like a good time away from the show, and I'm just like, you know, maybe it's just like I go in phases, but then you get a time like this where I'll sit down to watch a story like Paradise Towers, and I'll be like, oh, that's why I love Doctor Who. I completely forgot.
Absolutely.
That's why I love this show.
Yeah, it's like I went on a little bit of a break too, because I mean, I like, for me, the love I have for the show, it's always there, but like the
true it fluctuates a bit. It does fluctuate for me.
And like I've been getting back into it recently because, like, I mean, I've just been listening to Big Finish and watching some of the episodes, but I love the show. It's so good.
Yep. And I can't. And again, it's like every time I remember this, I'm like, oh, that's right. We're gonna get like 3 specials in November for the 60th anniversary, and it's probably gonna be great. And I'm so excited. Yeah,
I'm very excited. Yeah.
But also, like, I think the bittersweet thing about this series is, now that it's coming near the end, is like the opportunities I'm gonna have to like watch a brand new Classic Who story is running out. You know, there's nothing like opening up a fresh packet of Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I had seen this before, but I couldn't really remember it. And obviously, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to register a lot of the subtext that I can now.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's why, like, back on the whole, like, I guess, watching Classic Who for the first time, like, it's why I love the Blu-ray so much, because a lot of them give you new ways to watch it. Like, I have never seen the original version of Daleks, because the version of that BritBox has is the updated one with the Nick Briggs Dalek voices and like the CGI city.
Oh, is this Day of the Daleks?
Yeah. Day of the Daleks.
I think I've seen both, but I saw the original version 10 years ago, the same time I saw Paradise Towers.
That's fair.
Mm.
But like, and like with season 24, like there's extended cuts of every single story, so you now have, slightly new ways to watch the story. And that's why I love the Target novels, because those are also new ways to experience the same stories, and you can almost re-experience what it's like to watch it for the first time. I will say, I don't recommend the Delta and the Bearman Target novel, because it's almost exactly the same in terms of, I think the first part's good, and then it just evolves into chaos, but the difference is, because it's an audiobook, now it's 4 hours long.
Oh, yeah. I see.
So, but yeah, like, it's... The last Classic Who story I watched before I had seen them all was Planet of the Spiders.
Mm.
And that was a hell of a one to go out on, I think. And I think Wheel in Space for You is going to be a good one, too.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Planet of the Spiders, especially in terms of performances, is a belter.
Oh, it's so good. I loved
it. The only thing that it always itches me when I watch this, I'm like, the Master should have been in this story. Like, Roger Delgado's Master should have been in this story, but he couldn't be because he died. That's so sad.
It's so, like, this is an interesting thing I think about, but, like, there are so many bits of Classic Who that are so etched into, like, our minds and our, like, ideas of canon that are solely because, like, one small thing happened. Like, one guy decided to drop out of playing a part in Doctor Who, and another guy decided to fill in the role because he thought it was a bit beefier. And because of that small event, we have Nicholas Courtney as Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart. Because in the Web of Fear, that was not who was originally cast as Lethbridge Stewart. It was Nick Courtney was originally going to play a different character, but because that guy dropped out, he filled in the role.
Also, another thing. Here's one that's very relevant to this story. Robert Holmes dying before he could write the last episode of The Trial of a Time Lord. If that didn't happen, we may not have Sylvester McCoy as the Seventh Doctor. Because the way that Robert Holmes wrote the end of the story would have given the BBC a golden opportunity to end the show.
Yeah, unfortunately. Like, I've always been in two minds when I hear about that, because on one hand, I would have loved to have seen Robert Holmes finish Trial of a Time Lord, but on the other hand, I like that we have more of the show.
Yes.
And I do completely understand JNT's perspective of, if we do this,
I would just hope there was a timeline out there where you could have had both. You could have had Robert Holmes finish the story and have the Seventh Doctor.
Yeah. I mean, like, one thing that's interesting is when Eirich Sayward, because he originally did write an episode 14, and he kept it very in line with what Robert Holmes's original idea was, and JNT was like, "This is great, awesome. Can you change the ending?" And he was like, "Absolutely not." And because of that, and I presume a variety of reasons, he left the show.
Because Eirich Sayward was very wanting to stay true to Robert Holmes's original idea, because he respected Robert Holmes. He really respected him, and he wanted to, in his memory of his passing, he wanted to tell the story the way that Robert Holmes wanted it to be told.
Yeah. And
so Eirich Sayward wanted what was best for the story, whereas JNT wanted what was best for the show as a whole.
Yeah. And it's, I love hearing about what Doctor Who production was like in the 80s, because those, I guess, the sort of office politics that were happening at the time is really interesting.
Also, funny thing, if Margaret Thatcher hadn't hogged the studio, Warriors of the Deep may not have had the production it does. Michael Gray wouldn't have had the excuse to delay Doctor Who or put it on hiatus, therefore Trial of a Time Lord would have never happened.
Thanks, Margaret Thatcher. Actually, no. I like Trial of a Time Lord.
I do like Trial of a Time Lord up until a certain point. Fun fact, on the season 23 Blu-ray, if you go into the PDFs that are on the disc, you can actually read Robert Holmes' original Ultimate Foe Part 1, but you could also read Eirich Sayward's original Part 2. Mm-hmm.
And it's really good. It's really interesting. Again, I'm happy that we got what we did. I wish what we got was a bit better, in my opinion. But
it's not Pip and Jane's fault. They were put in the hardest situation possible.
I feel like the only episode they wrote in which they were kind of allowed to breathe was Mark of the Rani. Because Terror of the Vervoids was I'm pretty sure what happened was someone else dropped out, I think. I might be making this up a bit. But with Ultimate Foe, they're can you write this? Also, you can't know anything that happened in the original script. Also, we're going to have a lawyer.
There were two other writers that just couldn't finish their scripts. They weren't able to get it all together. I imagine it's possibly because the premise was so complicated.
Probably, yeah.
You think about it, you're having to write a story that's based in the future of a trial, and also introduce a new companion, and also have it be a murder mystery. That's a lot to do. And also, Pip and Jane made it an allegory for reverse compost. People wave Terror of the Vervoids off as being a fun romp. It's actually a really ambitious sci-fi story, a really, really ambitious story.
Yeah, it's one of the most interesting in concepts, I think.
Hmm.
Like, one with the idea of introducing a character before their introduction story, and also just like everything that was Terror of the Vervoids. Like, I genuinely think it's interesting. I don't think the execution was the best, but I love the idea behind it.
Apparently, Digital Spy named episode 4 as one of the reasons for swimming pool phobia.
Interesting. Okay.
And apparently, Richard Briers, who played the caretaker, he ignored the directions to tone down his performance in part 4. And J&T and Cartmel were concerned about the performance.
I think it's perfect.
I really like it. Patrick Mulkern from the Radio Times says it's Briar's career low, saying, shockingly bad in the story, there's no escaping the fact that the chief caretaker, the key baddie in Paradise Towers, is just Richard Briers in a silly cap, silly mustache, putting on a silly voice, mugging for England, sending up Doctor Who in a horribly misjudged, self-indulgent performance, especially after the caretaker has been zombified by the great architect. Briers growls and clomps about like an embarrassed dad playing the bogeyman. It plunges in an already teetering production into the abyss. I'm going to disagree with the production. I think the production's really strong. I understand the machines are a bit clunky, but the actual set is really good.
I agree. Like, it's meant to be as claustrophobic and like small as it is. Like, it's one of the few stories like Fort of Doomsday, I think, is another one where the set being like the restrictions you have in making the set add to the set itself.
They really dirtied up the set in a way that made it look real.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Because I think Nicholas Mellett's direction on the whole was superb. Like the camera angles and the setting and the blocking and all the like attention to detail was fantastic.
Absolutely.
And as of course we've praised the most Stephen Wyatt's writing, like for this, he's very clearly so intelligent.
Yeah, he very much had an idea and was like, it definitely feels like the idea that you sit on for a while before you actually write.
Yes.
Like, it feels like he had always wanted to write a Doctor Who story, and he had this in mind, and then he finally got the chance to.
Yeah. I mean, The Greatest Show in the Galaxy is also a great story too. As you said, it's your favorite.
It is my favorite. Well, it goes between that and Inferno. I can never figure out which one is my actual favorite.
Inferno is pretty awesome.
I love Inferno.
I mean, the thing is, The Greatest Show in the Galaxy and Inferno are so different.
That's why it's hard for me to pick, because like
you can't really compare them. So it's almost like they're like two completely different TV shows.
Yeah. Like, the only thing they have in common is that the main character is called the Doctor. That's basically it.
I guess technically the TARDIS console is in Inferno.
True, and like, sure, you like the Doctor travels to another place.
They are two extraordinarily different kinds of horror as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, I mean, I don't want to, like, I feel bad talking about, like, other Doctor Who stories in your Paradise Towers video. But, like, Season 7 I've always loved because with Doctor Who and the Silurians and Inferno, I love that those two stories are almost entirely Earth-based. Like, the Primords, despite looking a bit weird, is what happens when humanity reaches that part of its own planet. And, like, that's genuinely frightening, that, like, if we did what they did in Inferno, that's what would happen to us.
I love that Inferno, because in most of Doctor Who is what's outside Earth, be in the stars or in time. With Inferno, it's what's beneath the Earth.
Yeah. That and Doctor Who and the Silurians, I think.
Yes, it's the same thing as what's beneath the Earth, but in a different way.
It's so good. I love Season 7. Season 7 and Season 26 are my two favorite Doctor Who seasons of all time.
They are two of the most consistent, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Paradise Towers.
Paradise House is great. Yeah, and Kef McCulloch as well. Like, again, his music is very abrasive. It is very on the nose. It's not subtle, but it's. No. I think it fits the story really well. Because the whole tone of the story is so in line with Kef McCulloch's sound. A lot of the music in Time of the Rani that he did is fun to listen to, but it is almost like it's invading. Like, it's almost just, I'm more focused on listening and enjoying the music than I am focused on what the characters are doing. Whereas in Paradise Towers, everything feels like it actually fits like a glove, like it's actually supposed to be there.
Oh yeah, there were so many pieces that obviously could not have been written without having seen what's going on.
Yep.
Like the cowardly cutlet part, and like the part at the beginning when they're doing the greeting, and like how the music matches up with it. It's really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do think I definitely prefer Dominic Glenn, and I do think I prefer Mark Ayres, but I don't think that Kef McCulloch is as bad as some people say. I think he definitely has some good scores. It's just his style is so of its time that I think people find it weird. And sort of, admittedly, especially in Time in the Rani, a lot of his sounds are very plasticky because they're fake. You know, he's using a lot of fake violins and all that. But in Paradise Towers, I think it's utilized a lot better in terms of score.
I agree. It fits a lot more than some of the other stuff. Like, yeah, I don't like the Time of the I don't really like the Time of the Rani score that much.
I think it's fun to listen to, but it's not really great as a score for a story.
Yeah, it's very much like music, and it's not like
yeah.
Like I think we were talking about Murray Gold in RTD versus Moffat, like how in your opinion, I think like the music meshes better in RTD's era than Moffat's, whereas in the Moffat era, it's more so just kind of blaring at you.
Well, again, like I've said, I've told you this in private messages before, but
yeah,
the music that Murray Gold actually makes for the Moffat era, most of it is really good. It's just the editing process, like how they use the music, what songs they play and when they play them, the purpose. That's what sometimes feels weird about it. But when they get it right, it's great.
Oh yeah.
Like in Heaven Sent, for example. The music in Heaven Sent is fantastic, and the music in The God Complex and The Girl Who Waited and Amy's Choice and Vincent and the Doctor and there's a bunch of other examples I could think of. Probably Face the Raven's another one that's mostly really good music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say like World Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls.
And
really good.
And a story that we're going to be talking about later, Sleep No More, has really good music.
It does, absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. The Blue Cane Leader was unnamed on screen, but apparently in Stephen Wyatt's novelization, her name is Drinking Fountain.
Great. Thanks, Stephen Wyatt.
Do you think it would... Is it annoying that the umbrella in this story doesn't have the question mark on it?
I don't think it's annoying. Like, it's just something that I notice. Like, it doesn't bother me.
If Delta and the Bannerman was 4 parts at the start of the story, you could have him like rip the stick off and replace it with the question mark. Like, imagine if they had like a scene like that.
I think there's a Big Finish audio that actually explains the umbrella, because of course there is.
Oh my god, that is the most Big Finish thing ever, is the fucking umbrella gets a character arc.
Well, I think it's the warehouse, if I remember, and I'm pretty sure there's also a story that explains why the Doctor changes coat in like between season 25 and season 26.
God.
And it's not like that's the point of the story. It's just like the story happens. My umbrella has been ruined. I'll have to get another. I haven't heard the warehouse, so I'm not actually sure how it happens, but
Andrew Cartman was the one that suggested that the gangs are all female and have colors.
Nice. I think it makes them more iconic because it's different than what it would have been if it was in like a 70s story, I think. Because like, let's be honest, if it was a 70s stories, it would have been all men. Like, I think at least, like especially like Philip Hinchcliffe era.
Sylvester McCoy said he was still nervous about playing the Doctor, but Nicholas Mallet recalls that he said that he was more malleable than Colin Baker, citing that Colin Baker would never improvise, whereas McCoy was made for it. That is a good point, actually. It's interesting because it's a bit like, because like John Pertwee wouldn't improvise either. He was very stick to the script, whereas Patrick Troughton and Tom Baker would go off and do whatever they wanted, especially Tom Baker.
Yeah.
And then it's the same thing, like Colin Baker was very stick to the script, whereas McCoy would go off and do his own thing.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, I feel like William Hartnell wanted to be one, but he swayed towards the other just because there were times where he didn't remember his lines.
Yeah.
There's a great scene that was pointed out to me in the War Machines where the first Doctor messes up his line and the actress who plays Dodo, Jackie Lane, just like goes with it immediately.
It was actually there was an interview with Jodie Whittaker and Chris Chibnall sitting next to each other that kind of showed that Chris wanted her to improvise and she wanted to stick to the script.
Okay.
You know, like the way that they didn't directly say that, but the way that they speak about the role, the way that Chris says is like, oh no, I just the character is all her, it's all Jodie. She has her own personality that she's putting in the Doctor, and then she'll say things like, oh, you know, Chris writes me all these great lines, and I just do what I follow his judgment because he knows this show. Like it was a weird clash of idea. But it seemed like almost like Chris wanted her to improvise and she wanted him to give her directions.
That's interesting. It also could just be like if you like this, don't give me the credit, give them the credit. They're the ones that are doing all the good work.
Yeah, that also could be what they wanted to mean, but just the way they were saying it made me think of that.
That's fair. And it's possible.
Not to bad faith them or anything, but that's just my inkling.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I haven't seen I don't think I've seen almost any interviews from the Chibnall and Whittaker era. The only one I watched was from Comic-Con.
Well, there's quite a few interviews with Jodie Whittaker, but there's very little with Chris Chibnall. He does barely any.
That's fair.
Whereas, like, RTD and Stephen Moffat would do a million interviews.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, Chibnall was on, like, Comic-Con panels, and, like...
RTD was literally on the Graham Norton show, like, last week. That's crazy. How often does a writer get to be on the Graham Norton show?
That's really cool.
But I think because with Russell T Davies, he's got such an entertaining personality that he fits being on a talk show like that. As of 2022, and I imagine 3 as well, this is the first televised Doctor Who story since The Daleks, from which one could start watching the televised Doctor Who and witness the entire televised Doctor Who career of every writer you would encounter.
Oh, okay. I get it. That's cool.
So in other words, no writer has written for the series prior to Paradise Towers, and thus far written for the series from Paradise Towers onwards. That's not true. Rona Monroe wrote The Eaters of Light. Oh no! Oh right, because she's after Paradise Towers. That's right. I forgot about that. Sorry, in my head I was thinking, oh, but she's in Classic Who, but then I remembered she's after Paradise Towers. She writes Survival.
Yeah.
Interesting. So there's no writers from before Paradise Towers that wrote after Paradise Towers. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Although Russell T Davies nearly wrote an 80s Doctor Who. He was very close.
Yeah. Mind of the Hodiak.
Yep.
Have you heard Mind of the Hodiak?
And also, I believe The Long Game as well was almost a classic Who story.
Really? Huh.
Yep, he'd been wanting to write The Long Game since the late 80s.
Ah, nice.
Probably after watching this story.
I could see that, yeah.
Yeah. No, I have not listened to Mind of the Hodiak, but I am aware of it. Yeah. Anyway, give your conclusion and a rating out of 10 for Paradise Towers.
Oh, great. Okay, let me improv an essay real quick. As if I don't do that for every essay I ever write. So Paradise Towers is a story that commonly falls on the lower parts of a lot of people's lists, specifically with Classic Who, and sometimes for the Seventh Doctor in general. I personally believe that to be a fairly undeserved status as a not well-liked story. I think the story has a lot of really interesting parts, like within its runtime. Like, you have a lot of really interesting themes of like class divide, I think, is one. I think there's also a good theme of just the way that culture and society progresses when you give it limitations, and the fact that you watch these people in their own very separate lives at the end of the story come together and work to break the system is genuinely really like exciting, and it is a great payoff to what you have seen in like beforehand. And the Kangs are really interesting. I love how you can tell there's a history based on just specifically the dialogue that they use. Like, there's a clear evolution of language similar to what you see like in stuff like State of Decay, and just the little things like the fact that we see a yellow Kang at the beginning and then we don't see any more, showing that like they're slowly getting picked off, which is really interesting. And then with like the Rezzies, with like the Rezzies giving you an idea that there is a past, but they either don't think about it or they can't think about it because they don't live in a society that lets you think about what happened before. And then people like the caretakers, who find that they have to live by the rules that they're given, like to such a comical degree, which is, I think, a lot of people's problem with the story, that there is a comic edge to it. But there is something genuinely funny about the fact that every time you call on someone that is in another part of your building, you call them by their full employee ID number. Like, from what I remember, I don't think any of these people have names. It's literally just like guard 234-5 blah blah blah. That is their identity, and all of these very different cultures coming together and being able to put a stop to the system that caused them to come into existence. And it's also great for the Seventh Doctor, because you see the Seventh Doctor enacting all of this change, and not in a way where this wouldn't have happened otherwise, but in a way that shows these people, yes, you can make a difference. You aren't bound by the walls that are surrounding you. And Mel really just wants to go to the pool. That's basically her arc. But it's still fun, you know. It makes sense for this character who just wants to have fun with traveling with the Doctor. And I think that Pex is a really fun character, and I think that the way that he's written and the way that he acts is genuinely really fun. And I love how he gets a redemption in the end. And I do agree that his final scene is a bit rushed, or like the scene after his death is a bit rushed. But I remember watching it for the first time and seeing Pex lives on the wall and just feeling like a sense of triumph. Like, what is so important to these Kangs is that they write on the wall what is important. And when one of them wrote on the wall, Pex lives, that is Pex
and
being
has blue and red crossing over.
Absolutely. And just, those are the things that they decided was important to remember. And I love it. I love the story. I don't know if I want to let the the fast death thing hinder my ranking because I just love the story so much. And it's something that has nothing to do with the story itself. It probably is just the fact that it was bound by studio time or like TV time. Crap. Okay, here. Quick poll. Do you think I should let this hinder my final score?
Well, I mean, you should give it whatever you want, really. It's your score.
All right, fine.
I believe in freedom.
Hell yeah! You know what? Through my own act of free will, bound by the walls that is my house, I'm giving the story a 10 out of 10. I really like this. It is one of my favorite stories. I give so many Seventh Doctor stories specifically a 10 out of 10. Like, I just love it. I think it has really good ideas. It has a really good execution of said ideas. And I think that despite the fact that there are things you could poke holes at, I do think that those genuinely add to the story. So yeah, that's my rather long spiel about Paradise Towers. I just really love it.
Yeah, you said a lot. It's hard for me to follow on from that, really. But like you said, class divide, the human condition, gang warfare, historical artwork that has meaning versus vandalism, authoritarian procedure, lateral thinking versus flat thinking, childishness within a society, and just, yes, it is also fun, and yes, also we see the Seventh Doctor like flex his manipulative side properly for the first time, and the difference between, you know, Mel's idea of a fun traveling holiday in the TARDIS is equivalent to a heavenly scenario for Pex. And then the Second Coming allegory, and then the disingenuous advertising, and then everything in between, the direction camera shots, the acting. Yes, even the acting. Yes, even Richard Briers is fun. It's all so well done, and it's so intelligent and so intellectually satisfying. I am going to let the pacing of the conclusion affect my score because of my personal standards of, this is something that people like. I sort of I have certain requests from, even though it maybe is a studio time thing, just overall, I'm being fair when it comes to judging based on what the end product is. I do want to encourage creators, if I can, to do things in a certain way. So if it wasn't for the fact that the space of time between when Pex dies and when his funeral happens, if that had an extra scene in there to really let it breathe, this would be a 9 out of 10. Because it's rushed, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10.
Solid.
Still a great story, but it's just got that one thing that needs to be patched up for me to really solidify it as a classic. Which, for season 24, is pretty high praise.
Absolutely.
As far as fan consensus goes, and this is so much better than Time in the Rani, like by a mile. Yeah, the hate for the story is very overblown.
Oh, absolutely.
Now,
I know I'm the guy that likes everything, but even then, I think this one's really it's really underrated.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a lot of classic Doctor Who is underrated in general, regardless of what your reputation is. I'm the guy that likes everything. Once I watched through Classic Who, I'm like, no, a lot of this is really underrated, actually.
Yeah.
And it kind of, not to be mean-spirited, but it did make me sort of realize maybe some of the fandom is easily upset by certain things. You know, maybe there's things that set them off that I don't really see as a major issue. And in some cases, I actually enjoy, like the chief caretaker.
Yeah, I think a lot of people. I do think that Classic Who is not for everybody, and that's totally okay. Like, the pacing for Classic Who is very, very different than Modern Who. And I totally understand that that's always going to be a
Well, I
problem
mean,
for
a lot of classic Doctor Who writers grew up reading books, and a lot of new Who writers grew up watching television.
Yeah.
And watching
Absolutely.
movies. So naturally there is a difference in entertainment structure, I guess.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how that comes across in the two eras of the show. Like, even like watching William Hartnell versus watching Sylvester McCoy, there's definitely a shift.
I was actually thinking that when I watched the story, because there was that bit where I referenced the Keys of Marinus in terms of waking up with having been brainwashed, and then along that, after I said that, I was just like, you know, this show really does change a lot over the course of 20 odd years.
Absolutely.
Like, I do find it weird when people brand Classic Who as being all the same. When you look at William Hartnell, and then you look at, say, Tom Baker, and then you look at this, it's like three completely different things.
Absolutely. Like,
and again, the comparison we made,
the
comparison we made between Inferno and The Greatest Show in the Galaxy as well, it's the same thing.
Yeah, like the two most different episodes in the universe. Like, it's not the same all the way through. Like, there are so many changes. There are so many people with so many different ideas as to what a show of this, like, very broad appeal could have. And they all give it that, and it works for almost all of them. Like, I think the classic show has some of the most successful executions of vastly different paths that, like, different people took.
Yes,
show.
Especially from a script writing point of view and an acting, like, bringing that to screen point of view. Obviously, people will always rag on limited budgeting and all that, but when it comes to the script writing, there's so much imagination that goes into classic Doctor Who.
100%.
Yeah,
and I do think that there's a level of, like, modern lens that we watch Classic Who with, which I think exasperates the wonky sets and, like, bad, like low budget. Like, I was watching an interview with Phil Collinson about Terror of the Autons, in which he said that, like, when I was younger and we were watching these stories, no one said, "Oh, that looks bad." Like, "Oh, that green screen or blue screen looks weird." All we thought was, "This is terrifying. There are mannequins and dolls that are coming to life. Oh God, what if my teddy bear kills me?" Like,
yeah, that's two. Yes, because there's two reasons for that. One is the standards have been raised by production values as a default, and also, and that's down to technology, and also there's a lot more widespread knowledge about how filmmaking works these days. It's not as hidden. You know, the magic tricks are all out there now.
Yeah, I mean, the internet means everybody can know anything about everything.
Yeah, basically. Privacy is very limited when it comes to knowledge these days.
I mean, it's back to the saying of, like, everybody's a critic. Like, literally, everybody can be a critic now.
Yep.
And, like, we all have so many new things that, like, because Doctor Who as a classic show, especially, was really not made with the intention of, oh, people are going to watch this 30 years from now. Like, there's a reason why so much of 62 was destroyed, because they all thought it was going to be a one and done. Like, but now we have it forever.
At the same time, though,
so many things to look at it.
At the same time, though, it really blows me away how much dedication goes into that 60s stuff, despite the fact that everyone making it knew it was only supposed to be watched once.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the most incredible part, like the writing and the acting and all the dedication, like the costuming. There's so much effort put in, despite the fact that it's like people are gonna watch it once and then never again.
Yeah,
wow.
Like, it seems like the classic show put in the most effort when it was meant to be a one and done. Because in the 60s they made, like, 40 episodes a season? Like, it's insane the amount of effort they put into this show. They've always put into the show. Even now, like, they do so much. Like, I think that, like, talking about the plot of Flux aside, the production of it in like the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic is genuinely like admirable. And like they've all like the people who make the show have always pushed to try to make the best that it can under the circumstances that they're making it. And I think that whether it's successful and whether it is sometimes a failure, it's always admirable how much effort that they put, because I feel like everybody or most people in the production put in 110% of the effort that they have. And I
almost wonder if like the Chibnall crew didn't know how good they had it until they had the pressure of COVID and they had to try and produce the same level of standards with all of those limits going against them.
It must have been very weird for them, yeah. Like it's because I don't know when Flux was filmed versus when COVID really struck, but it's a very new situation because like we've never had that big of a widespread isolation pandemic during the age of like the internet and like the age of television, really. Like I might be misremembering history, but I don't think there was anything really like that before. Like at most you would delay an episode of a TV show because the president was assassinated. Like there's never anything where it's like, oh shoot, we now have to all be 6 feet away from each other. Now it's like, it must have been really exciting actually, I imagine, because it's like, okay, now there's more stuff we have to work with, and like whether they did that successfully or not, we could like rant about another day, but like it's genuinely, I mean, I think it's really admirable that they were able to do it at all.
Absolutely. Right, well, there's one more thing we have left to do.
Yeah.
And that is...
We really talk a lot.
Oh, yeah. I am a chatterbox for sure.
Likewise.
We will be defending the episode Sleep No More against Hellbent.
Yay.
So I believe you just rewatched this today for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, I rewatched it yesterday.
Okay.
And I did something that it's the first time that I rewatched it since airing, I believe, back in 2015. And what I remembered was that it was the only one-parter of Series 9. I remember that it was found footage. I barely remembered the plot of it, and I remember that when I was 13 or 14 watching it, it genuinely kind of freaked me out. And so what I did when I watched the episode was I turned all the lights off in my room because it was dark outside, and I just watched it as if I was actually going to watch like a found footage horror movie, like the Blair Witch Project. And remind me, because I'm very worried that I'm about to give a really strong hot take. What is the consensus of this episode?
It's a love it or hate it, I think.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of people that say it's one of the worst, but then you do see the odd person crop up and say, no, it's not. It's really good.
Well, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I'm gonna be one of the odd people. I don't think it's a masterpiece. Like I don't think it's an unsung masterpiece.
No, it's not a Paradise Towers, is it?
No. I think that there's a lot of like, I guess to get negatives out of the way first, there's a lot of dialogue and there's a lot of over-explaining of certain ideas that I think are unnecessary. But I think the found footage is actually used really well because of how it's implemented, because it's specifically pointed out that it's not cameras that we're watching. It's people's eyes. Like there's a great line that someone says, I think somewhere, where it's like the realization of, like, for the audience, when one of the characters says, there's no cameras on this ship. Like, where did you get the footage from? And just the idea that, like, when you go into this sleeping machine, they basically implant a camera into your eye without you really knowing, because the characters in the show, until the doctor hacks it and like looks into the footage, they don't know that it's there. And it's this idea like permeating, I think that's the right word, like throughout the whole episode, of how much control does this company have over the people that work under it? Like, everybody, it actually kind of similar to the Paradise Towers thing, where everyone has to say like the same thing when they greet each other. I forget exactly what it was. Like, I think it was like, "May the gods smile upon you." I think that's what everyone says.
That sounds like a Series 9 line of dialogue.
Yeah. And I just think that's genuinely very fascinating as a concept, because you have these machines that like make it so you don't have to sleep. You go in for like 2 minutes and then you pop out. And it also, I definitely think this is going to be a hot take. I do think that the Sandmen people are genuinely kind of terrifying, because it represents another one of those, like, there's constantly something within you that could come out, but you do a normal thing every day that keeps them at bay. But you don't realize it until all of a sudden you're trying to like streamline it and make it faster. Like this creature that is always within you, wanting to like be released, but sleep is what solves it. Like or like is what keeps it at bay. And the moment you start not sleeping, it starts to like really come out, and before it literally overtakes your entire body, like it's really creepy. And like the way that they like show the creatures, they really don't show them with lighting. Like they're always in the shadow, because it is a bit dodgy CGI. But the way that they show them, like in like the flickering lights and like the shots where it's like you see them very off in the distance, or like the very quick camera movements of the POV of them looking over, seeing them coming closer, and then looking back at the door that they're trying to open. It's really freaky. Like I don't know if it's necessarily scary, but it's definitely atmospheric. Anyways, I've talked too much.
Why do you think? No. Why do you think it's better than Hellbent?
Oh, that's true. That's what we're doing. Well, for one, I actually like this story. I think that it plays with its idea. I think that one of the big things that a good story needs is more than a good idea. Even it needs a good execution, because there are stories in which there are bad ideas with good execution. And I think that with this story, it's a bit of a dodgy idea, but I do think it has a really good execution for what the idea is. Whereas with Hellbent, I didn't necessarily like the idea of bringing Clara back from the dead after what I believed were 2 really good episodes dealing with her death. Like, I think Face the Raven and Heaven Sent do a great job at taking a character who had died so many times and making it feel real again. And they bring her back again, and I don't think that was an idea that was good, nor an idea that was executed very well. I also think that the direction is a lot more creative in Sleep No More than Hellbent. I do like the direction in Hellbent, but I think that with the found footage aspect, it gave them a lot more freedom to be creative, and I think that it makes the direction stick out more in my mind. Do you have anything specific?
Well, I think one of the main reasons why people don't engage with Sleep No More is because there isn't really many defining characters. And that's not just to do with the individual characters. Like, obviously you got Reese Shearsmith's little character that speaks to us a few times.
Yeah.
But I would say that's even inclusive to the lead characters. I don't find there to be any really memorable... Can you think of any memorable lines from the Doctor or Clara Oswald in Sleep No More? Like, I can't really think of much there character-wise that really sticks. A lot of it is very plot-focused. It's very focused around its ideas. Like the found footage, the sleep dust, the society thing, the fact that it's set next to Neptune, and it feels very honed in on that one aspect, and it kind of sacrifices the whole point of why you have these characters there. That's kind of one of my biggest gripes of Sleep No More. I do think it has a lot of atmosphere, and I think Murray Gold's score is incredible. I love listening to that score. Personally, this might just be because of the way my eyes work. I do find the shaky cam a bit nauseating with like the found footage.
That's fair.
But that's more just like a motion sickness trigger as opposed to being poor direction necessarily. I do like the ideas that you have presented in terms of like the whole thing of you have to sleep to keep things at bay and how much control does this company have over you with its sleep machines. That is quite creepy. I remember the last time I watched it. Now, this is the funny story about Sleep No More that I didn't tell you that you wanted me to save for the video.
Oh, yeah.
So I did a marathon about 4 years ago with my friends watching the show. And we got to Series 9. And, Series 9 is known for its two-parters. And, up to that point, you'd had, 4... I guess people... I would technically consider Girl Who Died and Woman Who Lived to be separate, but relatively speaking, narratively, it is structured as if there are two-parters, in a way. And then we got to Sleep No More, and then we got to the end of the episode, when they're running away from the creatures, and then my friends who were seeing the show for the first time is just like, right, looking forward to part 2. And I was like, no, that's the end of it. There's no part 2. That's all it is. And he was like so confused that he didn't. He's like, what? And I think the reason why is because it generally does have an anticlimax. Like, it is one of those stories where they just run away and escape, and that's it. And there's not much of a real resolve to it. It kind of just ends very sort of abruptly, I guess.
That's fair. I actually... sorry, go ahead.
Like it may have a thematic resolution, but in terms of the central plot and characters, it doesn't really have one. They just escape, and that's it. It also has a unique thing of it's one of the only Doctor Who stories that doesn't have the title sequence in it.
Yeah.
I believe Chris Chibnall rectified that. He has a couple, 1 or 2, I think. That I like that.
Like,
it technically does have a title sequence. It has like a screen of code with the Doctor Who text in it, but it's a different one.
Yeah. I will say about the ending, I do think that it is a bit of an anticlimax, but I do kind of like that it's one of the only times in which the Doctor doesn't win.
Yeah, I can understand that. Although, personally, I almost wonder if one of the times the Doctor wouldn't win would actually be more fitting of a different story in that season. That's my perspective on that.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
Yeah, I'm a bit. I have a few hot takes about the Zygon inversion. I think I've shared them on Twitter a few times before, and I almost think I would prefer the story if the Doctor did the speech and then it didn't work and he was left heartbroken, a bit like the end of the Silurians. Maybe it's because they wanted to do something a bit different to that, but the ending of Sleep No More with the Doctor not winning doesn't really carry the weight it should for what
that's true.
For what that is. However, I'll tell you why it's better than Hellbent. Well, Hellbent has a lot of things that it does a lot of things wrong that Sleep No More doesn't, like character assassination, and it doesn't respect cause and effect. It thematically is in contradiction to previous episodes, which I think have very strong thematic storytelling. It has lore inconsistencies, and it has what I think is an insufferable trait, which is the freedom to lower the stakes around resurrection. So there's a lot of things that Hellbent does that are against itself. But what I think Sleep No More does better than Hellbent is its concept is fully realized within itself. And it is kind of an apples to oranges because Hellbent is paying off other episodes, or at least it's trying to. and it's tied to the whole show's history and the whole character's history, and Sleep No More is very self-contained. But what Sleep No More does well is it's very compact and concentrated, and it doesn't sabotage its own ideas. I don't think the ideas are great. I think the sleep dust thing is based in the idea of ordinary things being terrifying, which is a very Robert Holmes sentiment. And I think the idea of sleep dust being the terrifying thing is a weird idea. But as you say, in terms of execution, they do things like when you go to sleep, you keep this monster at bay. And how much does this company control over you? And the setting of Neptune is unique, and Murraygold's score is really cool, and the whole look of the place that they're in, the ship that they're in, is really dynamic and interesting. And there's just so much about Sleep No More's concept that is, whilst I don't really care for the idea itself, it is respectful in its execution. Whereas I think Hellbent is an example of self-sabotage. You have all of these ideas that are incredible, that are, in my opinion, ruined, as opposed to an idea that's mediocre, that is respectfully contained and, I guess, kept at bay. Or sort of... There is a level of dignity to Mark Gatiss' execution of his ideas in Sleep No More that I think Hellbent lacks. And I think something that I'll praise about both episodes is I think they both have some very good Murraygold music in them. I love the Morpheus song from Sleep No More, and I love A Duty of Care from Hellbent. I don't like the meaning behind A Duty of Care, like in terms of the story, but I like the song itself. I like the music. And what it's trying to do.
Yeah, I agree.
Although Hellbent does have one line of dialogue that I really like, that I think Sleep No More doesn't have much good dialogue. There is one line that Rassilon says to the Doctor, and unfortunately I think the Timeless Children has undone this a bit, but there is one line that Rassilon says to the Doctor in Hellbent that I really, really like, and it's when he says, "How many regenerations did we give you?" Which leaves like a level of uncertainty for the future of the show, because previously they were locked down to the 13 lives thing that was established in The Deadly Assassin. And now going forward, now that it's been reset, it's ambiguous as to how long the Doctor's going to live. And I really like that. I think the Timeless Children has recontextualized that in a way that makes it a lot less ambiguous. But that is one thing I will say in Hellbent's favor. It's probably my favorite moment in Hellbent, is that one thing that Stephen Moffat did with the Doctor's remaining lives, is he made it uncertain. Which is, I think, a really nice... Firstly, it means that in universe, the Doctor now knows that he's no longer bulletproof, and that every regeneration means it could be the end of him. But it also means in the meta, it means that every showrunner now doesn't have to do what Stephen did in Time with the Doctor and have to go through all of that stress trying to find a way to keep the Doctor alive. So like that was a good move, I think. But yeah, on the whole, I do think Sleep No More is the better story for the reasons that I said.
Can I ask you a question that I don't know if you're gonna ask, or if you're gonna ask this later on in the series, so you don't have to spoil it. But do you prefer Hellbent or the Timeless Children?
So it's funny because when I first started this series, the Timeless Children hadn't aired, because I started this in 2018. So the Timeless Children is actually 2 years into doing this.
Wow.
They are very close. I think I could see any argument for people preferring Hellbent. I could see the argument. But for me, I think I said this recently, actually. Thematically, I prefer... Because I don't like the Timeless Children either. But it was after I saw an article by Chris Chibnall where he talked about the Timeless Children. Well, not talk about the Timeless Children, but he talked about his history as an orphan. And seeing how... Like, sort of reflecting on his era and seeing how that side of his history has influenced his creative decisions on these characters. And once I saw thematically his point of view on why he would think telling a compelling story about the Doctor being an orphan of this society would be interesting, it made me realize thematically why the idea of the Timeless Children appeals to Chris Chibnall. I think the execution is rotten, but the idea, I think I like the rationale behind the idea of the theme of it more than I like the idea of the hybrid in Hellbent. And that's probably why I prefer the Timeless Children. Also, I also find the Timeless Children to be bad in a really funny way, whereas I find Hellbent to be bad in an aggravating way, so it's more entertaining for me to watch.
That's fair.
Because Hellbent is being presented as high art, whereas the Timeless Children, a lot of it is schlock.
That's fair.
Yeah. It's schlock with a bit of serious lore and backstory and character moments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. They're not too far apart though. I do put Hellbent and Timeless Children very far down because, and this going back to I think there's a lot of Doctor Who fans that say that being a boring story is the worst thing. I think maybe when I was younger I thought that, but these days I've changed my turn because I think I'm not as harsh on boring as I used to be, and also I actually find a lot of Doctor Who to be... I actually find very rarely that I find any Doctor Who to be boring these days. I'm very engaged with a lot of the show, regardless of how I like it or dislike it. But the other thing is that I think I've moved a lot of my negative standards towards catastrophic implications. And I think Hellbent has a lot of catastrophic implications, whereas I don't think Sleep No More really has any catastrophic implications. I think it's just really unfulfilled in a lot of ways. That's my sort of point of view on it, and why there's a lot of stories that people would think are boring to watch that I prefer over Hellbent, because I find catastrophic implications to be a lot more aggravating than boredom. So yeah, that's my justification.
Nice.
So yeah, I think we did well there. Thank you for joining me.
I think so too.
That was,
Thank you for having me. Much fun.
Great to rewatch Paradise Towers for the first time in 10 years. I really liked it a lot.
Yeah.
And that means that the next time on Worst of Classic Who will be Dragonfire, which I have never seen before. I've seen clips of it. I've seen little bits of it. Especially the scene I've seen the most of it is the scene where Mel leaves and Ace joins the TARDIS. And I know that Sabalom Glitz is in it from Trial of a Time Lord. So that's going to be something to look forward to. Toby Selby, I should say. I'm aware of the cliffhanger. The Seventh Doctor puts him over the cliff with an umbrella, and I'm aware that it's not explained properly because they cut those scenes from the final version.
The greatest cliffhanger ever, you mean?
Yeah. But yeah, I know very little about Dragonfire. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Are you going to be watching it with anybody, or...?
Yes, I watch all of these stories with someone. I'm not 100% sure who yet. I think originally I was going to have Joey. I'm not sure if he still wants to do these kinds of videos anymore. If it's not him, I'll have to try and find someone else who is positive on the story, hopefully.
I mean...
Do you like Dragonfire?
I do like Dragonfire, yes.
Okay, well, I'll keep that in mind. See how it goes. But yes, next time on Worst of Classic Who will be Dragonfire, and then that'll be the penultimate, because after that will be Dimensions in Time. Which I also have not seen in full.
Have I seen Dimensions? I don't remember.
I've seen bits of it. I've seen the pickled in time scene with the Rani. And I've seen the bit where they all put the 3D glasses on.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen lots of still images of it, so I know I'm aware of the characters that are in it.
Isn't it the one time that we saw televised Colin Baker with the Brigadier?
That's true. Yeah.
I think that's
anyway.
Yeah. But
anyway, anything you want to get off your chest before we wrap up this video?
No, I mean, if you want to hear more from me, I'm sure my Twitter will be in the description probably.
Hopefully I remembered.
It's okay. If you didn't, my @ is the GD256, and then the letters GD and then 256 numbers. I would link my YouTube, but I don't do much on it really anymore. So if I do anything, it'll be through Twitter. So if you want to hear more from me, then go there. But that's basically everything. Seriously, thank you so much for having me on. This has been great.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we had a great time with the Time Monster and the Armageddon Factor, and despite the episode Time Flight, we had a great time. We did have a fun time with it, and we had a great time with Paradise Towers. So clearly a recipe for success.
Hell yeah!
And we will see you all next time on the Worst of Classic Who series for Dragon Fire. Bye-bye.
Bye.